Und weil der Mensch ein Mensch ist, drum braucht er was zum Essen, bitte sehr. Es macht ihn ein Geschwätz nicht satt, das schafft kein Essen her.
Rum links, zwei, drei, rum links, zwei, drei, wo dein Platz genossen ist. Weil ich ein in die Arbeit einheimst und weil du auch ein Arbeiter bist.
Und weil der Mensch ein Mensch ist, drum hat der Stiefel im Gesicht nicht gern. Er will unter sich keinen Sklaven sehen und über sich keinen Herrn.
Drum links, zwei, drei, drum links, zwei, drei, wo dein Platz genossen ist. Weil dich ein in die Arbeit einheimst und weil du auch ein Arbeiter bist.
Und weil der Prolet ein Prolet ist, drum wird ihn kein anderer befreien. Es kann die Befreiung der Arbeiter nur das Werk der Arbeiter sein.
Drum links, zwei, drei, drum links, zwei, drei, und ein Platz genossen ist. Weil dich ein in die Arbeit einheimst und weil du auch ein Arbeiter bist.
Здравствуйте, comrades. Welcome to Socialism Saturday. Socialism Saturday is where we watch the real far left, the farthest of the far left, the most dystopian of the dystopian. And the reason that we take a little time out of our Saturdays every single week to do this is because, well, we're sadists or masochists or both. Maybe. Both, probably. Hey, I'm really sorry if anyone is expecting to see this stream on Twitter, but because I had the nerve to update my Twitter profile name, Twitter is not allowing me to stream to their platform right now, even though I pay money just the same, because it takes, every time you update your profile name or your profile picture, it takes several effing days for them to decide that you're still the same person that gave them your ID in the first place. And so tonight we are not streaming on Twitter, and that is not my fault. That is Twitter's fault. But we are on YouTube, we are on Rumble, we are on Kick, if you would like to journey over there. And, we are continuing our journey into the Denver Communists this week. Now, listen, we got some good news last week, and I should have had this up on my screen, and I didn't, so I apologize. Please give me a second to get it up on my stream. Give me a moment, please. Pretty please, if you should be so kind. Let's see. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Almost there. Hang on. Oh my god. Of course, my computer runs so slow every time I start streaming. Every time I start streaming, my computer's like, are you sure you really want to do this? And I'm like, yeah, I really am sure I want to do that. And then they're like, but are you really sure? And I'm like, yup. And the computer's like, but I don't really want to do it. I'm like, oh, computer is doing me wrong. Hang on. We're gonna find it. I should have had it up already. We're gonna find it. Maybe we're not gonna find it. Maybe it's just gonna be one of those days. Maybe everything in my life is gonna fail me today. It's kind of like you know what it is? It's kind of like accepting that that we're just completely and totally effed. It's like, you should just accept that nothing is gonna work the way I want it to work the moment that I need it to work. Why would that actually happen? Why? Come on. Yup, this is not gonna work out. It is not gonna work out. Hang on. Oh my god, I am so unprofessional. Look, just took a shower so my glasses are all steamed up. We're gonna find this. We're gonna find this. This was good news. In the meantime, file in, everyone. Please make sure you mount that like button for me. Please make sure you are subscribed to the channel if you are not already. When things are working the way they should be working, this is a much smoother process than what's going on today, I'll tell you that. Ba-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Where is it? Where is it? Nothing works. Denver communists. If this doesn't work, I give up. Hey, there it is. There it is. Okay, we're back in business. We're back. We're back. We're back. Okay. Let me show you. Why is everything moving slowly? Some boy has to come and help me with the technical stuff on my computer. I swear to God, because this has become untenable. It has become untenable. The amount of bullshit that is, anyway, I'll complain about that later. Hey, so good news, guys. Good news. Who was here last week when we were watching the Denver Communists? Was anyone here last week when we were watching the Denver Communists? I was here last week when we were watching the Denver Communists. Now, the Denver Communists are an organization that I just love because they have, when the computer deems fit to show them to me, computer, there you go. The Denver Communists on their YouTube channel have all sorts of amazing things. They've got all these videos. They've got years worth of training videos archived. And we've been slowly but surely making our way through the Denver Communists because one thing that's really great about the Denver Communists is they speak in relatively plain English. And so this is a really great opportunity for people who are new to socialism. And I'd love it if anyone is new to Socialism Saturday, please let me know if you're new to Socialism Saturday because we like to take care of our newbies because watching socialism can be an overwhelming experience. It also helps me to identify who I should not yell at. Because if you're new, I don't want to yell at you. The only people I want to yell at are people who've been around long enough to know better. But if you're new, I'm not going to yell at you yet. But the Denver Communists are a great introduction to socialism because they speak in relatively plain English. They say the quiet part out loud all the time. And they hit on just a wide range of topics that we cover on the radical revolutionary far left. And so their YouTube channel is actually a treasure trove of content for us to learn from. So last week we were watching the Denver Communists, and wouldn't you know it, but literally in the middle of, well, it wasn't even in the middle, at the end of the stream last week, we found a video of the Denver Communists literally saying that they were going to violently overthrow the U.S. government. And it was 4 hours. We streamed socialism for almost 4 hours last week, going through all these different presentations. We were watching a presentation about their critiques of Maoism to figure out how revolutionary socialists in America perceive Mao, because I've been saying, why don't socialists ever talk about Mao? Well, it turns out they don't like Mao at all. So anyone telling you that we are in the middle of a Maoist cultural revolution in the United States is lying to you. P.S. Anyone who tells you that we are in the midst of a Maoist cultural revolution in the United States is lying to you. That part got overlooked. A lot of conservatives are lying to their audience. James Lindsay's lying to their audience. Even, I gotta spank Trevor Loudon, man. Trevor fucking Loudon. I swear to God. And there's a lot that I like about Trevor Loudon, but Trevor Loudon is now trying to convince people that Kamala Harris is a tool of the Maoist cultural revolution. And I'm like, bro, no. Not really. No. That actually really annoys me because I like Trevor Loudon a lot. Anyway, I'm not going to spend too much time on it because I actually do like him, but like, the fact that he's releasing a book saying that Kamala Harris is a Maoist cultural revolution plant, it's like, bro, come on, grow the fuck up. Anyway, but apart from that, we got a clip of the Denver Communists saying they want to violently overthrow the U.S. government. Now, this isn't even the first time I've gotten socialists on video saying that they want to violently overthrow the U.S. government. This is actually the second time in the last year I've gotten that clip. And so it kind of made the rounds, and I'm actually really pleased to report that Andy No Andy No, who has always been supportive of my work, unlike some people. Andy No actually, posted the video out to his audience. He gave me full credit because Andy No is a stand-up guy that does a stand-up job. The post-millennial ended up covering it. Denver Communist Host Training, urging the recruitment of active military members to overthrow the United States government. Now, what I will say is they spelled my name wrong, and I DM'd Hannah, and I was like, Hannah, do you mind updating the spelling of my name? And she never responded to me. The post-millennial also was inaccurate in its reporting because they said that the activist, and activist is not spelled correctly, that activist added in the training on Maoism, basically this article in the post-millennial says that the communists were advocating for Maoism when they weren't. I also DM'd Hannah that, and I was like, Hannah, they're not advocating for Maoism, they're advocating for Leninism. And you might want to update your article about that. And I gave her several days to update it before I actually talked about this publicly. So, it's a good and bad take with the post-millennial reporting on this. The good thing is the video's out there and, people are seeing it, and that's a positive thing. The bad news is that the post-millennial doesn't understand the difference between Maoism and Leninism and doesn't actually take feedback and can't actually interpret left-wing videos all that accurately. Which is not Andy No's fault, it's Hannah Nightingale's fault. And so if anyone wants to drop Hannah Nightingale a line, because I already tried to and she ignored me, saying, hey Hannah, can you please update that part of the article because they're not advocating for Maoism, like explicitly, like that's just factually incorrect. But anyway, we celebrate our victories where we can, and I'm happy that the post-millennial did report on this. Yeah, like Hannah, girl, literally all you had to do was use AI to copy edit. Girl, it's not hard. Come on. But, at least they included my post. At least they included my video. They included my credit. And, given that I live in a land where James Lindsay likes to struggle session people to get them to take my credit out of things, I will take what I can get. So that was a good thing that happened last week. And so I thought, let's continue with the Denver Communists this week. I was kind of thinking about doing something else. I was thinking about doing a presentation on Marx's On the Jewish Question, and I do have that slated. I do want to watch that this week. But you know what? Let's just keep going. Let's just double down with the Denver Communists. Let's just keep going. I've got a number of presentations pulled up here. We've got our political traditions. We've got the miseducation of the proletariat. I had this on the list last week, and we just didn't get to it. We've got the Revolutionary War and the myth of U.S. democracy. We've got on romanticizing illegality. I'm going to be interested to see what they have to say about that. And I've got eradicating racism at the root. And those are the ones I have pulled up, and I think that should give us a pretty solid show. We can always go back and find more content or change the content up if we need it, but lots of little vignettes to watch from the Denver Communists. I do think it's going to be a great introduction for any new people, and so that's what we're going to do. Let me just make sure my Telegram people know that we're live, because my numbers are shockingly low. Guys, can everyone make sure to mount the like button for me, please? Because more people should be here right now. This is the constant struggle that I've had. More people should really be here right now. Well, how don't people know that this is 6 p.m. Eastern Time every Saturday? I don't know. What is the political significance that they're Leninists instead of Maoists? Does it really matter? Yes, it does. Yes, it does. It matters for several reasons. One, Lenin strategies and Mao strategies are not the same things. Mao comes in the tradition of Stalin. Today's socialists and communists in the United States do not like Stalin. Leninists do not like Stalinists. Mao is in the tradition of Stalin. Therefore, the revolutionary socialists and communists in the United States do not embrace Maoist tactics. It also matters because every single fucking conservative influencer who has talked about Mao repeatedly is lying to you. They're all lying. If you don't know what group you are fighting, if you don't know what tactics the group is using, if you don't even know what the people you claim to care about believe, then you will never defeat them. And the reason that your shill conservative influencers are saying Mao, 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 Mao is because they hate China. Because that is part of the conservative narrative that they are shilling out there all the time. It is a propaganda effort to lie to you, to make you believe something is happening that is not happening. And in the process of doing that, the real communists and the real far left, who are not Maoists, who are not Stalinists, they are Leninists for the most part, almost all of them, they're operating completely unopposed. And you have no idea, because you're listening to people who go Mao, 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 because they hate China. That's why. It is absolutely significant. Conservatives blame China for everything, and that is why they are selling you a line that said this is all a Maoist cultural revolution, and they are all lying. Democrats versus Russia, Republicans versus China. Exactly. And you know, it really bothers me, honestly. It really bothers me when conservatives are like, I don't even think this makes a difference. I don't care that they're Leninists and not Maoists, Carlin. It doesn't really matter. Well, then you're going to lose and your children are going to suffer and you're going to take all of us down with you because you couldn't be bothered to understand the enemy that you were actually fighting, and you wanted to pay money to people to lie to you because they said things that made you feel good. That's why it matters. Because the truth matters. Reality matters. We don't make shit up here. Seeing conservatives talk about communists, which they don't understand at all, is like seeing an atheist mathematician talk about Catholicism. Ain't that the truth, Milo? Ain't that the truth? Hang on, let me update our super chat thing here. Got our first super chat of the day. Guys, if you appreciate what I'm doing in terms of taking some time out to stream this stuff for you guys on the internet, please let me know by sending in a super chat. I do have a goal of getting $100 of super chats per stream just to make sure that I'm covering my basis and I'm able to continue to do this for you. That means that if 20 of you appreciate the work I'm doing enough to send in $5, that meets the goal, and I really do appreciate it. All right, speaking of James, I do have a James update. Not that one. That one. So James is continuing. Quick James Lindsay update, and this is actually hilarious. This is legitimately hilarious. And it does actually relate to the Mao conversation too. So James is continuing his meltdown against the woke right. James has now declared that the most important thing that he can do is to teach everyone on the internet that the woke right exists and is a real thing, even though James made it up. It does not actually exist and is not actually a real thing. James is calling everyone who disagrees with him a demon. That makes sense. James is going off on Aaron McIntyre, and maybe I should actually watch that Aaron McIntyre video because I hate Aaron McIntyre. I've hated him for a long time, but the fact that James is so tweaked by that video kind of makes me want to watch that video, if I'm honest about it. James says, Aaron McIntyre, woke right, says I'm close to communism now. It would be hard for him to discredit himself more. But the woke right laps that kind of thing up. I'm so anti-communist, I'm against the fake conservatives who are helping them achieve it. Aaron McIntyre is a propagandist and a fraud. I didn't actually want to watch that Aaron McIntyre video before, but I kind of want to now. We're not going to do that right this second. Maybe we'll do that a little later. Who knows? But I did appreciate James finally actually releasing a list of people to help us understand what he means when he says the woke right. So basically, here's what I think. James believes that anyone who is not a classical liberal is the woke right. And the first group on his list are groypers. Because this entire woke right meltdown has been because James is tweaked by Nick Fuentes and the groypers going into his Twitter replies and annoying him. Listen, man. Yeah, groypers. Shout out groypers, literally at the top of the woke right list. James also says that Christian nationalists are the woke right, that people who don't believe classical liberalism are going to save us are the woke right, that people who believe in this philosopher, I don't even know who that is the woke right, that fascists and semi-fascists are the woke right, and that neo-reactionaries are the woke right. So essentially, again, the definition that James is giving us for the woke right is anyone who is not a classical liberal. Really think about that. James does not want the Republican Party to be conservative. James does not want the Republican Party to embrace conservative values. James quite literally, and Nick Fuentes called this man. I didn't actually believe him when he said this to me after I sent in a super chat on his stream last week, but Nick Fuentes completely said this. I said to him, Nick, I was like, why is James going after Catholics? Do you have any thoughts on this? And he said, well, they want to turn the GOP into a classically liberal party and Catholics are standing in the way. And I was like, I don't know about that. And then literally the very next day, James is tweeting about how he wants the Republican Party to be a classical liberal party. And I was like, fuck. Every time I doubt Nick Fuentes, every time I'm like, I don't know about that, Nick, he turns out to be right. That it's uncanny. And it's kind of like, you know, the Groypers used to tell me when I was saying, I'm going to vote for who I want to vote for president, the Groypers would say, Carlin, you're going to vote for whoever Nick tells you to vote for. And I was like, I don't know about that. And they're like, no, just wait, you're going to see. And I was really like averse to this idea. I was like, no one's going to tell me who to vote for president. But like, there have just been so many instances in the last like year that Nick has been proven right over and over and over and over and over again. Even when I doubted him, that I've resigned myself. I'm like, okay, Nick Fuentes can tell me who to vote for president. Like, I am doubting no more just because this has happened too much and I don't want to have to continue apologizing for being wrong because I don't like being wrong. But Nick Fuentes was right. James believes that everyone who's not a classical liberal is on the woke right. But here's the thing. This was actually my favorite James moment of the week. Check this out. So James is like pontificating about all this stuff on Twitter. And he says, would it change your mind about the woke right if you knew that back in like 2008, CCP bosses were saying they could take down the American Constitution by a combination of a public health crisis and identity politics, and they co-opt the resistance through Christian nationalism? And then this guy was like, James, is there a source on that? And James says, there's no source for a private conversation I shouldn't have mentioned. And when I originally saw that, I was like, okay, so James's source is Pinky Swear Trust Me Bro. You guys know how much I love Pinky Swear Trust Me Bro as a source of information, right? But it gets even better. It gets even better. Do you know what the source of the conversation was? Michael O'Fallon. The source of the private conversation revealed himself. And it was Michael O'Fallon. Michael O'Fallon, for people who don't know, is the man that literally funds New Discourses. This is the man that funds all of James's work. So the source of the private conversation by which James is basing his entire perception of the woke right phenomenon is literally the guy who funds his work. This post recounts a conversation I had with Conceptual James on July 15th, 2019, at the Renaissance 57 Hotel in New York City. Yeah, James's boss is literally the source of the conversation. Here's some beer money, drink while watching Aaron. Yeah, I might have to do that, Bocephus. Thank you so much for the money. Yeah, if I'm watching that Aaron McIntyre video, I'm absolutely going to have to drink because I really, really do not like him. Yeah, and you know who Michael O'Fallon's source was? His wife. Exactly. His wife was probably the source of this idea. As I await a more favorable lighting for our film Trojan Horse video series, I outlined for James what I believe would eventually unfold. So basically, Michael O'Fallon pontificated to James about what Michael O'Fallon thought based on Michael O'Fallon's wife, who is the founder of a group called Atheists for Liberty, who is an anti-CCP group. And now James is basing literally his entire perception of the woke right phenomenon on a secret conversation that he had with Michael O'Fallon. Pinky swear, trust me, bro. This is why, guys. This is why I only deal in primary source evidence. This is why I only deal in receipts that everyone can wrap their head around and watch and observe. This is why. Right here. Because you are never, I promise you, you are never, ever, 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 ever going to catch me saying, you know, this is all based on a private conversation that I really shouldn't even be telling you about. And then it turns out the source of that private conversation is the guy who funds my work. You are never going to catch me in this, because every single thing I say, every single thing I do is backed up on video. Every single opinion that I put out there, I literally have video evidence to say, like, it's not coming from me, it's coming from them. You don't have to like me. You don't have to like my tone. You don't have to like my haircut. You don't have to like my body weight. You don't have to like anything about me. I don't really care. It's not coming from me. It's coming from video. Yeah, James holds the hidden knowledge. He's part of the Gnostic sex cult. So that is our James Lindsay update for today. And, you know, we're going to continue to monitor the James situation. Now, before we get into our videos for today, I just want to remind everyone, please make sure you are subscribed to my Substack, which is Carlyn, KARLYN.substack.com. If you want to fund the work I'm doing, the very best way to do it is by becoming a member over on the Substack for $8 a month, $80 a year. Unlike James Lindsay, I am completely 100% grassroots funded. That means that I quite literally cannot continue the work I'm doing without your funding. And I'm not going to lie, guys, it's been a little bit of a tough year. It's been a year where people have had to tighten their belts, and I understand that. But what I will say is, if you have the financial means to do so and you're not yet a supporter on my Substack, please help me keep the Substack free for everyone. Because if I see numbers going down on the Substack, which they have been going down a little bit lately, I'm not going to lie, because I feel like people are getting, you know, they're worrying about the economy and stuff like that. I totally get it. But if numbers keep going down, I'm going to have to make everything paywall on the Substack. And I really don't want to do that, because I really want my work to be free and available to everyone. And so I'm completely grassroots funded by you guys. You guys are the ones that decide how long I get to keep doing this. So if you appreciate what I'm doing and you want to help me keep my work free for everyone, it is less than a cup of coffee. $8 a month, $80 a year. I know it's an expensive cup of coffee. It's like a Starbucks cup of coffee, but it is still a cup of coffee. I pay upwards of $10 for a cup of coffee at Starbucks. But you guys can help keep me in business, and I really do appreciate it. Another way you can fund the work I'm doing is by heading over to my Speak Socialist Substack, and this is actually where I'm writing my new book. And what you can do is you can fund the publication of my next book, which is going to be called Re-Education: The Definitive Anti-Communist Guide to Decoding the Left. I am hoping to have that book done by the end of the month. I just published 3 chapters last night. I'm going to be cranking on this book. You're going to see a lot of content coming out of this Substack. And what's cool about this Substack is you can actually read the book as I'm writing it. You don't need to wait for it to be published in a book. You're going to actually get access to all of my drafts before it actually becomes a final book. And that's how I'm publishing from now on, because it's a special little bonus for people who want to support the actual writing of the book. This is separate from my main Substack. It's $10 a month, $100 a year. You also will get access to audio recordings, which I need to catch up on because I've just been cranking on writing lately. So I do need to catch up on some of the podcasts for it. But all of this is available on speaksocialist.substack.com. You can read my next book before it ever becomes public. And the whole goal of this book is to provide people basically a cheat sheet for Socialism Saturday, a cheat sheet for the far left. I'm basically putting everything out there that I've been learning over the trainings that we've been watching for the last 3.5 years, and putting it in short, concise, plain English so everyone can get introduced to this. Everyone knows what's going on. Marie, did I yell at you on your first time here? This is why I tell you guys to tell me when it's your first time here. So sit back, Marie. Listen, sit back, kick up your feet. You're going to learn a lot. Your mind might be blown, but I didn't mean to yell at you on your first time here. I didn't know it was your first time here, all right? So welcome. We will bring you up to speed on everything. The last thing you can do to support my work for today is by heading over to the Unwoke Art store. That is unwokeart.com. Link is in the description below, but I will also put it in the chat. And in the Unwoke Art store, you can find things like the new Marxism is Evil yard sign, which I've been getting a bunch of orders from. I've been getting a bunch. Oh my gosh. I've been getting a bunch of orders for the new yard sign. I'm really looking forward. Anyone who's ordering the yard sign, please make sure to take a picture of it and send it to me, because I cannot wait to see these yard signs in the wild. I think it's going to be so fun. Starbucks sucks. Carlin does not. Fell asleep listening to your intro last night, so I need to re-listen and catch up. I'll leave feedback. Keep it up. Hey, thanks, Dragon Balls. I really do appreciate the super chat. There we go. But the other thing you can get in the Unwoke Art Store right now, and it's going to be 25% off for one more day only, is I do have a new collection of Halloween designs in the Unwoke Art Store. So we've got 4 Halloween-inspired anti-communist designs. I'm going to show you each of them. They come on t-shirts, they come on sweatshirts, they come on pint glasses, they come on mugs, and you can get a special 4 sticker pack of those. We've got Marxism is Coming for Your Soul, which is Karl Marx as the Grim Reaper. We've got Collectivism, which is based on old school horror movie posters and just looks really cool. We've got the Karl Marx Everyone is Equal Until They're Not horror movie like style poster, which I love. And then we've got our zombie Marxist utopia of the dead. The zombie communists are coming to take over Washington, D.C. These are Halloween special edition designs. They are only going to be available in the store throughout the month of October. And if you get your orders in by tomorrow evening, you will get 25% off all your purchases from the Halloween collection. They go back up to normal price on Monday, but you can get all sorts of cool stuff. And they come in other colors as well, so you can get it in black, you can get it in red, you can get this one in gray. Let's see, I love this one in red. I need to order this one in red. How cool does that look? I mean, come on. Come on. You can get this in all sorts of different colors. So you can go on there, select which one you want. I actually kind of like the tan one of this. I'm not normally a brown person, but I like that. I like that color combination. Anyway, all that's available in the Unwoke Art Store. And you can really support the work I'm doing by picking up some sweet merch, and you get something you can wear in the public, which I think is cool. All right, guys, now that we've done our introductions, let's get into our show for the evening. We are returning to the Denver Communists. And before we get into the show, I do have to remind people of the rules. Chris said, "Think I'm gonna have to get a sign for my neighbors. My neighbor has a Trump sign, and their neighbor has one of those gay Democrat signs. Yeah, you're definitely gonna need to get a sign then, Chris. I mean, come on. This is like competing yard sign season." And it's not that yard sign can't be good all year round, but this is the season for yard signs, people. Come on. Anyway, let's talk about what we're doing here for Socialism Saturday for anyone who is new. Number 1, we do have fun, we do drink, we do banter in the chat, but always remember, this is a class and a research group, and no matter how much we might be joking in the chat, we do actually take this seriously. And so if you're coming here to own the libs, this is not the place for you. If you are coming because you want to debunk the socialist, this is not the place for you. We have heard every single owning the libs argument you can possibly imagine. We have heard every single debunking argument you can possibly imagine. It never does any good, and it actually inhibits learning what is really going on. The goal of Socialism Saturday is to immerse people in the culture and the language of the far left. That's so you can understand what they believe. You can understand their perspective of the world. You can understand your enemy, because if you do not understand your enemy, you cannot defeat them. That is what we're doing here. That is our purpose. And anything that distracts from that purpose is going to have to go. And if people don't like it, they don't have to watch. Remember, you are in my house. You are in my class. I am the teacher of the class. You are the student of the class. Please ask lots of questions. I encourage questions. What I do not encourage is you coming in and injecting your personal opinion based on whatever conservative influencer you might be watching, because most of them don't know what the F is going on. So ask questions. Be specific in your question, and we will answer all of them, and we don't mind doing that at all. But we'll tell you to cut it out if you're debunking or owning the libs or doing any sort of that stuff. Number 2, don't be a dick. Do not insult me. Do not insult other people in the room. I can do whatever I want because, again, you're in my class. But I promise you, I'm probably not going to insult you unless you start stuff first. So just keep it cool and it'll all be cool. Number 3, no whining. If I ask you to stop doing something, I expect you to stop doing it. The minute that you argue with me is going to be the worst decision you make all night. If I ask you to stop doing something, there is a reason for it. Just stop doing it. Number 4, listen. Listening is how you learn to understand people with different beliefs than you. Just because you understand what a person believes does not mean you have to agree with them, but the whole purpose of this is to listen and to deeply understand what the far left believes, how they see the world, and if you're not willing to do that, then you really shouldn't be here. Number 5, if you break my rules and you piss me off, I will permanently ban you from the chat because I would rather have a small focused group of people who want to learn than a large group of people who just want to debunk and own the libs and shitpost in my chat. So we do take this seriously. Please don't make me ban you. I really don't want to. All right. With that out of the way, let's get this started. We're going to start off with our political tradition. This is a presentation that was delivered to the Denver Communists a little over 2 years ago. And they're going to tell us about what they believe and where they get their ideas, which is important to understanding them.
While I was kind of like writing this and doing this presentation, the presentation ended up being kind of like a little love letter to DC. So I hope you guys all enjoy the pictures I dug up. So basically we're going to trace our political tradition from Marx down to where we are today with the Denver Communists and the Revolutionary Socialist Network and the Revolutionary Socialist Organizing Project. All right. So hopefully this presentation will answer some questions such as what do the Denver Communists believe in? What does it mean to join? And why are we so cool and fun? I'll also give some historical context to our political positions in this organization. The historical part is based on the article written by Steve, who's here tonight. So that also helps with my nerves. It's great. But if you didn't read it, that's fine. Steve can answer your questions after this. Don't ask me anything. All right. So we'll start with kind of the 1800s. The first big internal split within the socialist movement was between Marxists and utopian socialists. Marx believed in the self-emancipation of the working class. For him, socialism was not inevitable, so therefore the working class would have to take power from the elite in an organized and educated revolution for socialism. On the other side of this sort of first split, the utopians, they didn't really base their, I guess, desire for socialism in class struggle at all. Their view was kind of that educating everyone about their ideas would basically eventually convince politicians or the elite to just do socialism. So they kind of wanted to lead by example and focus mostly just on education. We do think education is important, obviously, but Marxists are at the core materialists, and we believe that ideas will flow from material conditions. So in order to bring about socialism, we have to change those material conditions.
Okay.
So this split kind of...
That's important. That's important what she just said. The 4 goals of the woke left are always the same. Gain as much power as possible, destabilize the system, attack capitalism, usher in their Marxist utopia. Every single thing the left does is about achieving one or more of those 4 goals. If you want to know why they're doing all these crazy things, then just remind yourself that the 4 goals are always and forever the same. Gain as much power as possible, destabilize the system, attack capitalism, usher in their Marxist utopia. What she just said is that Marxists are materialists. They believe that socialism will only occur if the material conditions of society push people in that direction. And so in order to wake up the working class, the proletariat, what they have to do is change the material conditions of society. So now let's go back to the 4 goals of the woke left. Gain as much power as possible, destabilize the system, attack capitalism, usher in their Marxist utopia. How do you change the material conditions of society? You do it by gaining power, by getting yourselves into positions of institutional power where you can make laws and policies that destabilize the system. When I say destabilize the system, I mean cause problems. You cause problems that cause people pain, okay? And when people are like, hey, the world kind of sucks right now. Why does the world suck right now, and how can we make the world suck less? The Marxists go, you know what's to blame for all of our problems right now? Capitalism. Capitalism caused all these problems. It wasn't the fact that Marxists got themselves into positions of power where they made decisions that destabilized society, which caused people pain. The destabilization changed the material conditions of society. When they changed the material conditions of society, people were like, society sucks. And then the Marxists are like, you know why society sucks? Capitalism. Capitalism created all of our problems. And if we just get rid of capitalism, then we will get our Marxist utopia. Then we will fix all the problems. And abolishing capitalism means eliciting the Marxist utopia. Does everyone understand? The destabilization of society is meant to change the material conditions of society to push more people towards abolishing capitalism and implementing Marxism. Let's listen to that again.
We do think education is important, obviously, but Marxists are at the core materialists, and we believe that ideas will flow from material conditions. So in order to bring about socialism, we have to change those material conditions.
In order to bring about socialism, they have to change the material conditions. How they change the material conditions is they destabilize the system. Socialists don't lie to each other, Sandy. Hang on. This is important to understand. Socialists will lie to you. So if you're saying that socialists lie when they say, you know what caused all these problems? Capitalism. Yeah, that's a lie. But always keep in mind, we're watching their private presentations. They don't lie to each other. They lie to other people. They don't lie to each other. They've convinced a lot of people that cronyism is late-stage capitalism. Yup. Material conditions are the things that you experience in the world. Material, like, could be like housing. It could be inflation. It could be immigration. It could be protesting in the streets, causing disruption. Anything that people experience in the world are the material conditions.
But Marxists are at the core materialists, and we believe that ideas will flow from material conditions. So in order to bring about socialism, we have to change those material conditions.
Does everyone understand that? I need a yes or no in the chat. Does everyone understand that? Okay, this is going to stop now. I am sick of the shit posting in my chat. You always do this. You post things that have no relevance to what we're talking about at all. You're going to get put in a timeout. If you keep doing it, you're going to get removed. I've allowed this for way too long, bro. Okay, everyone understands. Cool, thank you.
So this split kind of boils down to democracy versus elitism and revolution versus reform, which is a theme that we'll see this whole time. We know the left loves to split up, so that's kind of what this first part's about. So the next little split that happened, and is still happening, as we all know, was between Marxism and anarchism. Anarchists believe that political authority is at the root of all exploitation and oppression, so therefore states in any form are inherently oppressive. On the other hand, Marx advocated for the dictatorship of the proletariat, or a workers' democracy, which is basically a state that would help to crush capitalism and then implement a transitional phase between capitalism and communism. As long as this sort of revolutionary party was a democracy of workers, Marx had confidence that it wouldn't devolve into tyranny. Of course, anarchists can't get behind that idea because they view all forms of the state as inherently oppressive. So clearly we take Marx's side in both of these early sort of discussions. The next big debate or split was between the revolutionaries and the social democrats, or the reformists. This kind of happened around—
This is important. Okay, everyone ready? The Denver Communists are a far left radical revolutionary communist group. the Democratic Socialists of America are basically right next to the Democrats for them. The Denver Communists, and this is like, the Denver Communists is the real far left. Every time a conservative influencer says that the the Democratic Socialists of America are the far left, you need to stop listening to that person immediately, because they don't know what they're talking about. The Denver Communists are revolutionaries. The Democratic Socialists of America are reformers. The Denver Communists and groups like that do not allow their members to be part of the Democratic Socialists of America, because they believe fundamentally the Democratic Socialists of America are too close to capitalism. By the way, and this should go without saying, but it can't, because James Lindsay lies to people all the time. Kamala Harris is not a communist. Tim Walz is not a communist. Democrats are not communists. Progressives are not communists. Democratic Socialists of America are not communists. There is some overlap between people who are like actual communists, and sometimes they join the Democratic Socialists of America because they're trying to pull them farther left. But on the whole, the DSA are not communists. AOC and Bernie Sanders get denounced by the real far left literally all the time. Okay? So anyone who tells you that that Democrats, that progressives, that the DSA are the real far left, they don't know what they're talking about. You need to stop listening to them immediately. And what this slide is describing is the difference between the two. Okay? So revolutionaries are out to, abolish capitalism, bring in a Marxist world. Revolutionaries do not believe in using the electoral system to do it, whereas Democratic Socialists of America are still dicking around with the electoral system. If you guys have questions about the differences between the two, please let me know, but I wanted to do that preface before they actually explain this.
The next big debate or split was between the revolutionaries and the social democrats, or the reformists. This kind of happened around the time of the Russian Revolution in 1917, when the working class seized power, destroyed the capitalist state, and created a worker state. They were able to nationalize industry under the control of workers and suppress the capitalists. At the same time, the mainstream socialist parties rejected this method and tried to push the idea that electing a majority socialist party to government would be enough to just get rid of capitalism. They felt that the capitalist state should just be taken over by socialists, as opposed to completely torn down and rebuilt. Clearly, the reform approach hasn't historically worked. There's still a few sort of social democrat governments in Europe that just coexist peacefully alongside capitalism and make no attempt to actually take it over. We see this in America today with the DSA trying to reform the Democratic Party, or just elect enough socialists to just do socialism.
See?
So the reform approach is kind of a top-down approach that relies on politicians to change the state as opposed to workers changing it for themselves. On the other side, we
Does everyone understand that? The revolutionary approach is bottom up. The DSA approach is top down.
had the Bolsheviks, the revolutionaries, led by our boy Lenin. After their revolution in 1917, they turned their focus to creating a vanguard party that could encourage revolution internationally. For Lenin, this party would not be made up of elites and politicians, but it would be a militant, class-conscious section of the workers' movement that could convince the working class as a whole to take their power and overturn capitalism. I say almost every time we talk about Lenin that he would have loved Twitter, so I made him a Twitter. So
she made Lenin a Twitter.
He missed out, I feel. So even in this Bolshevik revolutionary wing, a split still occurred in 1920. While Lenin and the Bolsheviks rejected reformism, they were okay with fighting for reforms during periods of non-revolution. They took the stance that in times of non-revolution, the vanguard party should work with reformist workers in order to win partial gains. He called this a united front, and the revolutionaries also saw this as an opportunity to win fellow workers to the struggle against capitalism by going where the workers are, or as we like to say, intervening in social movements and labor struggles whenever possible. It's important to note that within the United Front, it was expected that revolutionaries should keep political independence and not capitulate to the reformists. They should be instead focused on bringing reform.
Revolutionaries should maintain political independence and not capitulate to the reformists. Again, the reformists are the Democratic Socialists of America. So they're flat out saying we need to be separate from the Democratic Socialists of America.
It's important to note that within the United Front, it was expected that revolutionaries should keep political independence and not capitulate to the reformists. They should be instead focused on bringing reformists into revolutionary politics. The other side of this split.
So that is why you do see just the tiniest bit of overlap between the far left and the DSA, because there's actually a caucus within the DSA that's like, it's like a Marxist revolutionary caucus. So they are far leftists, and what they're trying to do is actually infiltrate the DSA to pull the DSA far left to try to get them to let go of like their reformist tendencies. That is why there is just the tiniest bit of overlap between the two. But always keep in mind that the only reason that real far leftists would even be involved in the DSA is because they're trying to get them to give up their reformist tendencies and to actually become real far leftists.
It was basically ultra leftism, which is what this quote from Lenin is about. Some felt that communists should only be engaging with other communists, which Lenin called infantile ultra leftism, which I love. This is kind of another form of top-down socialism, since the idea behind it at its core is basically that the working class is too conservative or reactionary to create conditions for a revolution. So we have to like make them do it, or do it from top down, basically. Clearly, we don't take that approach here. We think that a party is essential in ensuring a victory for workers, but only material conditions can create this situation. All right. Honestly, my brain kind of shuts down when I try to like do Stalin stuff, so I'll try.
They don't like Stalin.
It's just all so chaotic and messy. But after the revolution, Russia was basically attacked and the working class was decimated. Stalin rose to power in this kind of chaotic time, like I said, and was forced to compete with the West. In order to do so, he had to accumulate capital at the expense of workers, which is clearly not very communist of him. He put his government into place, and then this is the quote I'm going to read that Steve wrote. And Stalin's government was based on the dispossession of the working class from political power and collective ownership of means of production. Stalin and his followers created theories to justify this counter-revolution as a continuation of the revolution. In reality, however, their rule was based on the destruction of that revolution, and as such was anti-socialist. They created bureaucratic...
Again, she's telling you that she believes that Stalin was anti-socialist. Mao is in the tradition of Stalin. So therefore, Mao is also anti-socialist, which we actually heard them say last week.
I think someone has to mute if they can. They created bureaucratic state capitalism, rejected the two cardinal principles of Marxism and Leninism, which are internationalism and democracy. Instead of trying to spread the revolution, they talked of socialism in one country. This meant downplaying revolution and instead making government-to-government alliances with the capitalist West. So although Stalin claimed that his sort of approach was a continuation of Leninism, it was definitely not that. His government was another form of socialism from above and was actually a dictatorship over the working class as opposed to a dictatorship of the working class. So today, a lot of people who identified as Marxist-Leninists follow this tradition under Stalin. But since it is a rejection of internationalism and the self-emancipation of the working class, we are like, nah. All right, so on that side of Stalin, the side that we're on, we had Trotsky, who tried to preserve the ideals of Marx. And
no one is illegal is going to be more Leninist than Stalinist, because Marxists do not believe in borders. Marxists think all borders should be eliminated. They believe that borders are the enforcers of private property. Marxists are also internationalists. They literally just said Stalinists did not believe in internationalists. They are globalists. They believe that communism cannot work if it's just one country. It has to be global. And so the goal is always going to be a global worldwide socialist revolution. Intifada means worldwide socialist revolution for explicitly this reason. So no one is illegal would be more Leninist and Marxist than it would be Stalinist, because Stalinists did not believe in globalism. Does that make sense?
and Lenin while Stalin was doing his thing. He supported internationalism and democracy and stood on the side of workers around the world, even as Stalin was kind of like getting closer and closer to capitalists. Trotsky emphasized Lenin's ideals of forming united fronts with other workers' parties to gain immediate demands and urged workers to lead the movements and take them to socialist revolution. This is a theory called permanent revolution, and it's a central sort of core of our politics today. Trotsky was eventually run out.
How does a dictatorship of the worker work? Just straight democracy is what they believe that the only true form of democracy is socialism. So yeah.
Of Russia and ice-picked by a Stalinist. So rip Trotsky. He would have loved Twitter too. By the time he died in 1940, the Russian state had degenerated and a form of capitalism had been restored in Russia, as the workers had kind of lost control and power to a new ruling class. Russia at the time was taking over Eastern Europe and imposing its sort of style of socialism onto the governments of
By the way, according to James Lindsay and his idea of critical immigration theory, the far left isn't supposed to support Ukraine at all because Ukrainians are white. But as you can see, in far leftist presentations, they absolutely support Ukraine, 100%. And so anyone who buys into this idea of James Lindsay's critical immigration theory, he was wrong from the very beginning.
Those countries, which really started to influence sort of the idea of what socialism is. The left started to think that the idea of self-emancipation was not necessary because, you could just invade a country and make them socialist, which we are against because we are against any form of imperialism. So we don't see this as a viable way to bring about socialism. So from Trotsky sort of developed our side of the leftist theory camp or tendency, I guess. And from that grew the International Socialist Tendency, which is sort of a loose grouping of Trotskyists that came out of post-World War II sort of Trotskyism. This is kind of where we come from. This is where the ISO, which was our former party group organization, came from. So there's a couple important theoretical ideas that come from the International Socialist Tendency. One, I lost my spot. One is the idea that Russia under Stalin was not a socialist country. We deemed it, or the IST deemed it, bureaucratic state capitalism, which is a clear distinction from sort of the socialism that we are about. Another big one was party and class, which is the clarification of the relationship between the Revolutionary Party and the working class. Under Stalin, the party was conceived as a small group kind of ordering workers around. However, on our side, we believe that the working class cannot be led by small groups, even if they do have the right ideas. We see ourselves as wanting to build a vanguard party, although we're not there yet. But the vanguard party would need to be a large section of the working class, with the most militant and class-conscious workers leading the struggle. All right, so from the IST came the ISO, which was founded in the 70s and dissolved in 2019. There's a lot of reasons why it dissolved.
Look at this
sort
sign.
of the ones that are always cited.
Look at this sign. The Democratic Party is the graveyard of women's liberation. Democrats are not socialists.
There was a lot of movement of members towards the DSA or some contingents that wanted to support Bernie Sanders for president, which goes against our belief that we should be politically independent from the capitalist class and all of its parties. There was also...
I want everyone to listen to that. She just said, the DSA wanted us to support Bernie Sanders for president, which goes against our beliefs that we shouldn't be working in the electoral system and we shouldn't be supporting the capitalist parties. They believe the Democratic Party is the capitalist party. Anyone who tells you that the Democrats are socialists are not listening to the actual socialists. Again?
That why it dissolved. sort of the ones that are always cited. There was a lot of movement of members towards the DSA or some contingents that wanted to support Bernie Sanders for president, which goes against our belief that
No. That's not what they're trying to do. The Squad are not socialists. The Squad are Democratic Socialists of America. Democratic Socialists of America are not socialists. They are specifically denouncing Bernie Sanders right now, right in front of you. Can you please use your brain? Again.
Support Bernie Sanders for president.
Hang on, we'll go back a little further.
There's a lot of reasons why it dissolved, sort of the ones that are always cited. There was a lot of movement of members towards the DSA or some contingents that wanted to support Bernie Sanders for president, which goes against our belief that we should be politically independent from the capitalist class and all of its parties. There was also a sexual assault and rape cover-up by the top sort of people that came out towards the end. That was obviously...
I need to just do a quick check, and I need everyone in the chat to answer me right now, and I need you to answer honestly, because this is not going to work if you don't answer honestly. Press 1 in the chat if you believe that socialists and Democrats are the same thing. Press 2 in the chat if you do not believe that Democrats and socialists are the same thing. I really need to know if there are people who are confused about this, because I feel like I'll keep hammering this point. Press 1 in the chat if you believe that Democrats and socialists are the same thing. Press 2 in the chat if you do not believe that Democrats and socialists are the same thing. Oh, look, we just got our first ban of the night! Goodbye! Goodbye, asshole. You're no longer welcome here. That's what happens when you break my rule about insulting me. That's your typical conservative right there. The person I disbanded is your typical conservative. All right, I'm seeing a lot of 2s. That makes me happy. Follow-up question. Press 1 in the chat if you believe the Democratic Socialists of America... No. I'm going to beat the fucking conservative talking points out of you. No. You just literally watched them explicitly denounce voting for Bernie Sanders. What is confusing to you? Follow-up question. Press 1 in the chat if you believe that Democratic Socialists of America are the same thing as communists. Press 2 in the chat if you do not believe that Democratic Socialists of America are the same thing as communists. 1 in the chat if you believe that Democratic Socialists of America are the same as communists. 2 in the chat if you believe that Democratic Socialists of America are not the same thing as communist. All right. Lots of 2s. All right. Excellent. Well, where the fuck have you been? Because you've literally, have you been listening to the presentation? Do I need to start the presentation again at the beginning just for you because you didn't bother to listen to? This is why we have a rule about listening, people. I hear you say there now, but I just haven't found out why yet. You are literally listening to real communists denounce the Bro. What do you think this slide is about? Were you here when they showed this slide? They're literally telling you that Democratic Socialists are reformers that believe in the electoral system, but that real communists and socialists are revolutionaries that do not believe in the electoral system. Are you confused? Is this confusing? Who is confused? I am going to beat the conservative talking points out of everyone who's confused by this. No, I can't. You've got it in front of you right now. Okay, now you're not confused. Excellent. Let's go back. Just need to find it. I think it was around minute 12 or something. All right. We're going to listen to them again talk about denouncing Bernie Sanders specifically. Would it be correct to say if someone calls them a socialist but they still vote, they are either lying or confused? No, that's not accurate to say. That's not accurate to say. Socialists can still vote if they want to. But most of them are there are socialists who still run for office. But not the ones that are causing all the trouble. Not the ones that are actually accomplishing anything. I mean, anyone that wants me to post the slides can go back and watch the video for themselves. I feel like I'm doing enough right now. When cons talk about these groups incorrectly, it's because, well, they're not educated on a particular No. When conservatives lie to their audiences, it is because they don't care what the truth is, and all they care about is shilling a narrative. No intellectually honest person can listen to what real communists and real socialists say in their own words right in front of you right now and come to the conclusion that Democrats and socialists are the same thing. When conservatives claim that Democrats and socialists are the same thing, it's not because they have some sort of hidden knowledge that only they can see, and conservatives have put together a conspiracy theory in a fucking Venn diagram, and they can see things that no one else can see. No, that's not what it is. What it is they are lying to you for money. They are lying to you to get you outraged so you support their political narrative. They are selling you a narrative that is not grounded into reality to get you to do what they want you to do. They are lying to you because they do not care about the truth. That is what is going on. It's not that conservatives are oh so smart and they have some mystical Venn diagram that none of the rest of us have access to. It's because they don't fucking care. They have never cared. All they care about is getting you to vote the way they want you to vote. And in the meantime, getting you to spend as much money with them as possible. That is all they care about. That is it. Now, let's listen again. And by the way, everything that I'm showing on this video is available to every single conservative influencer as well, because it's public on the internet. They could be utilizing this information if they wanted to.
Dissolved in 2019. There's a lot of reasons why it dissolved. Sort of the ones that are always cited. There was a lot of movement of members towards the DSA or some contingents that wanted to support Bernie Sanders for president, which goes against our belief that we should be politically independent from the capitalist class and all of its parties. There was also a sexual assault and rape cover-up by the top sort of people that came out towards the end that was obviously not very cool. And so it was dissolved in 2019, and we kind of broke off to become.
What is the reason that blonde that was on that Jubilee episode hasn't seen the slides, do you think? What is the reason? Because the conservative influencers that she trusts to inform her have lied to her for years and years and years and years and years, and she didn't bother to go out and find the truth. Because it was an easy talking point to make her famous on the internet. That's why.
Us. So these various divisions and debates on the left are super important because it helps us distinguish us politically from other socialist groups, although we happily work with any of them to achieve common goals. Today there's four, someone else has to mute, I think. Today there are four main issues that divide the left. The first is the issue of self-emancipation versus elitist rule, which we've talked about a couple times. This is kind of this Trotsky-Stalin split is like the biggest one. And we, of course, believe in the self-emancipation of the working class and a democratic from below working class control of society, as opposed to top-down socialism that only requires a small group of people. Another big debate is if we should support people who run under the Democratic Party. We see that as being in opposition to Marxist principles of working class independence. Even socialist candidates such as Bernie Sanders.
Hello. Should we support people as running as Democrats? Nope, we shouldn't support people running as Democrats. No. No. What's going on right now, David, is your conservative brain is trying to rationalize any way possible. They must still be Democrats. They must still be Democrats. They must still be Democrats. They'll work with the Democrats when it's... No. They're about to tell you they're not going to work with Democrats. When they say they will work with other groups, what they mean is other socialist and communist groups. Like, for example, the Party for Socialism and Liberation are currently running a presidential and a vice presidential candidate. They're doing so in spite of the fact that many socialist groups do not believe in the electoral process. But if there's some overlap to be gained by having a presidential and a vice presidential candidate running all over the country giving speeches on college campuses, they will work with that. But the Party for Socialism and Liberation is not democratic. They're not the Democrats. They're not the progressives. They're not the Democratic Socialists of America. They are talking about other socialist and communist groups. And by the way, guys, the reason that I have to get aggressive on this now is because one of the things I've come to understand that conservative dissidents, the conservative cognitive dissonance over this is so great that I literally needed to beat it into their fucking heads with a sledgehammer in order to get them. The Democrats are communists, the Democrats are communists, the Democrats are communists, the Democrats. The conservatives have been brainwashed to believe this. It is ingrained in them. And if you don't take a sledgehammer figuratively to their head, they don't fucking listen. And they look for any excuse in the world. No. When you said they weren't Democrats, you didn't really mean that, did you? Because they must be Democrats. Everyone in my life has always told me they were Democrats. Your conservative influencers lied to you. I'm very sorry. That's not my fault, though. And so if you get pissed off that I'm being aggressive, it's because conservative influencers have made this a requirement to get people who have spent all their time listening to conservative influencers to try to know what's going on. They've made this the reality. Saying that these people support Democrats is like saying that MAGA cons will vote for and like people like Lindsey Graham, Liz Cheney, Mitch McConnell, and other neocons. I wouldn't quite say it's like that because MAGA people will support people like Liz Cheney and Lindsey Graham and Mitch McConnell. MAGA cons voted for Mitch McConnell. So I wouldn't say it's quite like that. Blair White is a grifting shill. Blair White cares about what will make Blair White money. Nothing else. Okay, let's listen again.
Class control of society as opposed to top-down socialism that only requires a small group of people. Another big debate is if we should support people who run under the Democratic Party. We see that as being in opposition to Marxist principles of working class independence. Even socialist candidates such as Bernie Sanders or AOC do not get our support because we don't believe that true socialism can come from them.
Even people like Bernie Sanders and AOC will not get our support because we do not believe that true socialism can come from them. You need to stop arguing with me now. Your job, you were the one that came into my comments yesterday and you were like, Carlin, I hope my comments didn't rub you the wrong way. Your comments are now rubbing me the wrong way. Your job right now is to sit down, shut the fuck up, and listen. Your job is not to argue with me. Your job is not to educate me. You are not the teacher in this class. I am the teacher in the class. You are the student in the class. Sit down, shut the fuck up, and listen or get out.
The top. Should Marxists support workers' struggle against ruling classes in all countries? This is a question that's coming up a lot, especially with the war between Russia and Ukraine. Some on the left defend oppressive regimes because they are enemies of the United States. PSL is one that's like really light on Russia right now. However, we understand that the main enemy is here at home in the form of US imperialism. And beyond that, we recognize that there are lots of enemies in the world, and the enemy of the working class anywhere is also our enemy. And so we stand in solidarity with working people of all countries against their oppressors. And then finally is, excuse me, should we be class reductionists, or should we combine the fight of exploitation and oppression alongside class struggle, which of course is the side we take. We fight against all forms of oppression. Steve says in that article that oppression is one of the most disgusting and revolting parts of capitalism. So a revolutionary movement that doesn't address oppression will never win over the working class. These fights have to be one and the same, because a victory against exploitation is a victory against oppression and capitalism, etc. So that's how we got to here, to us. I'm just going to do a super quick overview of the important stances and codes of conduct that we have in place, but all of these can be found on our website with lots more detail. Our points of unity is kind of what gives us our consistent and clear political outline for the goals and the beliefs of the organization. So I outlined kind of how we got to here, and the stances that we've taken in historical debates. So this is kind of where our points of unity come from. The first one is for socialism against capitalism. We stand in the Marxist tradition of international worker action from below, organized, principled, and disciplined action informed by analysis of the state as an agent of the capitalist class and armed with the ability to strike. It just sounds so cool. Workers' power. We believe a socialist society can only be built when workers collectively take control of the wealth that we create and democratically plan its production and distribution according to present and future human needs instead of profit. Revolution. Capitalism must be replaced, obviously. The structures of the present government enforced by the police grew up under capitalism and are designed to protect capitalist rule. So the working class needs an entirely different kinds of state, a democratic worker state based on councils of workers. And internationalism. We impose imperialism, which is the division of the globe based on economic and military might, and support the self-determination of all oppressed people. We oppose settler colonialism and support sovereignty of all indigenous people from right here where we organize to occupied Palestine.
Give me an example of a settler colonist. We oppose settler colonialism. Give me an example of settler colonists that we might be seeing in the world today. What's a great Israel? Bing. The reason the left supports the reason the left supports Palestine and opposes Israel is because they believe that Israel are the settler colonists. Actually, Fluffy Cow Respecter, yes, actually the USA is settler colonists as well. Yep, they want to overthrow the capitalist US government for explicitly that reason. Very good. America, yep. Settler colonists mean you stole land from the indigenous people and you privatized it under the oppressive force of capitalism. Decolonization means taking the land back from the evil capitalist oppressors and returning it to the collective care of the indigenous people.
And everywhere in between. Full equality and liberation. We oppose white supremacy, misogyny, and all forms of oppression and acknowledge the compounding intersection of these oppressions. The liberation of the oppressed is essential to socialist revolution, and it will be impossible without it. The Revolutionary Party. To achieve socialism.
What is required to achieve liberation of the oppressed? What do they mean when they say to achieve liberation of the oppressed? Pop quiz. What do they mean when they say achieve liberation of the oppressed? Ding, ding, ding. Fluffy Cow Respecter in with the first correct answer. Means abolish capitalism. The oppressed will only be liberated when capitalism is abolished. That is the revolution they're going for. Liberation means freedom from capitalism. Abolishing capitalism, no one is free until everyone is free. Exactly. Abolishing hierarchy. Yeah, abolishing hierarchy means abolishing capitalism because capitalism creates all hierarchies. The abolishment of capitalism. Equity. Equity can only be achieved when capitalism is abolished. Intifada. Intifada means worldwide socialist revolution. Yep. Yeah, actually, I heard about this. The new Mexican president just called Spain a settler colonist and made them apologize for the conquistadors.
The most militant workers must be organized into a revolutionary socialist party. The ruling class in capitalism is highly organized.
Why is it incorrect to say abolish ownership? We're going to teach him. It's everyone's job to teach him. Why is it not correct to say that liberation means abolish ownership? Why is that incorrect? Well, yeah, personal property is a thing. That is true, but not quite. The abolition of private property. Yup, now we're getting closer. It means abolish private property. Yup. You can still own personal property. By the way, I actually figured out a really succinct way to describe the difference between personal property and private property. Personal property is something that you own that doesn't help you generate wealth. Private property is something that you own that helps you generate wealth. That's the basic fundamental difference. Ownership can encompass personal ownership. Ownership is just one aspect of capitalism. Yup. Well, no, that's one of the things. That's one of the things. That's not all the things. But the family unit is bourgeois property. The family unit is considered to be private property. Yeah, more or less. Private property includes your ability to own a house, land, rent as a landlord, intellectual property. Parental rights are considered a form of private property. Yup. Ownership does not include all private property, including the nuclear family. Yup. System is built on the ownership of people, and the entire system encompasses private property. Yup. It is important that we be specific about this, guys. It is important that we be precise and specific. Because part of the confusion that exists in the world right now about what the left believes is because people are not precise and specific in their language. Nope, this isn't the reason. This isn't the reason. That's a conservative talking point. That's not hinged into reality. Stick around, Dinker. We're going to teach you.
Organized and very disciplined. To effectively oppose it, we need to meet it with our own discipline and organization. And try to get mass mobilization of the working class. All right, this stuff can also be found on our website. But briefly, members are people who agree with our points of unity, have had at least one conversation with the current member and who pay our $5 a month fee or dues or have a sponsorship from a current member. We have a section on our website for routines and procedures that details how we make decisions and how disciplinary issues will be handled. That section also outlines the roles and responsibilities of the coordinating committee. And our code of conduct, which is centered around being respectful with everyone that we interact with in organizing spaces.
No. Your phone as a unit is not going to help you amass a lot of wealth. You know what does help you amass wealth? A home that you own, land that you own, an apartment rental that you own, intellectual property that you own, a private business that you own. The nuclear family helps you amass wealth through generational wealth, through passing on wealth from father to son, and individual liberties are just a separate thing, but your phone as a unit. This is $1,000 phone. This phone in and of itself, I can't resell this phone for like $10,000. It is what it is. It's a thing that I own, but it's not gonna. This phone is not going to amass me a lot of wealth. If I sold my house right now, it would be double the value of which I bought it. That's starting to actually be significant. You know what I'm saying?
Explicitly, we should not engage in any behavior or speech, even ironically, that reinforces any system of oppression. And we strive to be sensitive to others and not engage in exclusionary behavior. We have a lengthy sexual assault and domestic violence section on our page. Obviously, coming from the ISO, we want to take the most strongest sort of stance. We believe survivors, full stop. Therefore, we expel any member who is accused of sexual assault or domestic violence immediately and without investigation.
Oh my God! Holy shit! The Denver Communists, if you're just accused of something, they just expel you. That's crazy.
Until direct and overwhelming substantive evidence to the contrary is supplied. We're not mental health professionals, and we do have survivors in our org, so we don't try to facilitate recovery of a perpetrator or reintegration. A member who has had any allegations of this sort brought against them would be immediately expelled from the organization.
By the way, this is where Believe All Women came from too. No joke.
Longer welcome to attend meetings or events.
Not them specifically, but the general Maison site.
All right. Yay, look at this. We're almost there. So we answered kind of what we believe and what it means to join. So my final question was why the Denver Communists are so cool and fun. First, we are the only revolutionary socialist group in Denver that has a dead fash on our hands. So that's pretty cool. We also love having dance parties and mocking the state at any chance that we get. Protests and stuff are serious, but we also always find joy in them. And we are also super passionate about bringing a better world, and we want as many people to join us. So yeah, if you have further questions, like I said, ask someone else, because that's the most talking about.
That is the end of that presentation. That was the first one for tonight. That is our political tradition by the Denver Communists. That was designed to give a good overview of what they actually believe. I want to do a quick pause and see if anyone has questions about anything that they just saw that they have not asked yet. And please, it is important. Don't be afraid that I'm going to yell at you. If you're asking a question in good faith, I will answer it in good faith. In the meantime, I'm going to queue up our next presentation here. We're going through a couple of these presentations tonight. The next one we're going to do is called The Miseducation of the Proletariat, Capitalism, Indoctrination, and the Early Exploitation of Children in Public Education. Going once for questions on the last one. Going twice for questions. All right, please make sure you mount the like button for me if you appreciate that I'm taking my Saturday night to break this stuff down for you guys and to teach it to you. Please feel free to send in a super chat if you appreciate what I'm doing. $5, $10, I really do appreciate it. Help me reach my super chat goal, because I only get paid if you guys find what I do valuable. Dragon Balls. Fuck off. Let's keep going, and we are going to go into the miseducation of the proletariat.
This evening is titled The Miseducation of the Proletariat, Capitalism, Indoctrination, and the Early Exploitation of Children in Public Education. I'm really going to be focusing on younger students. Again, I work in an elementary school, and that's just kind of what got my gears going around this idea. So these are just a couple of funny little things that I found. I'll take a second to enjoy those before we get rolling.
Wait, what do these say? Hang on. Honey, it's 8 a.m. Time for your daily internalization of the bourgeois social order's values, norms, and subjectives in a place which combines mechanisms of disciplinary society and control society at the same time. The left can't meme. The left cannot meme. I had the thought that with private property and capitalism, that would mean a disconnect and a lack of control. Communism and socialism sought to connect everyone, so having no privacy. I'm not sure exactly what that means, Dinkard, if I'm honest about it. This one says, education for a global market economy. Now repeat after me. $5 a day is a fair and decent wage with the teacher. 5, and they're basically saying that the public school is indoctrinating kids into communism. Uh-huh.
All right. So the premise: capitalism needs to turn everything, including human beings, and apparently the not yet even born, into commodities, mattering only in their ability and potential power to produce profit for owners of the economy. That may be a
this is the essence of social reproduction. Now, most often we talk about social reproduction in the context of the nuclear family, because the nuclear family is the ultimate instrument of social reproduction. However, social reproduction does also take place in the schools as well. The schools reproduce the social system. That's one of the reasons that the left has taken over the schools, because they wanted to be in control of that apparatus to reproduce the social system. Thank you, two ladies. Shout out to your daughters. I appreciate you guys.
familiar quote to some of you. I'll let you read the other one and just begin by saying that the suggestion I'm going to make is that all of the ills of the public schooling from early education on our practice of indoctrination and early exploitation.
Hang on. Fluffy Cow Respecter, I just saw your chat over on Kick. I don't know when you sent it in, but I am kind of keeping an eye on Kick, but not all the time. On Kick, Fluffy Cow Respecter says, when they say working class, what do they mean by that? Does it refer to people who don't own land, businesses, and factories? Yeah, so essentially when they say working class, what they mean is people who work for other people. So people who have like a typical like blue collar jobs are always going to be working class, but even white collar jobs can be considered to be working class, because as long as you are not an owner. The bourgeois class is the ownership class, okay? The bourgeois class, the capitalist class, the oppressor class are the ones that own private property. So they're the ones that own the businesses. They're the ones that own the land. The people who work the land as like farmhands or people that, you know, do the work of like actually picking the fruit and doing like the farming and stuff like that, those are considered to be worker class, because they are the ones doing the work that generates the profit for the owners. Great question. I'll do a better job of keeping an eye on Kick, too. Pop out, chat.
Of children of working class families, and that schools broadly are a mechanism of control to produce the next generation of subservient, productive workers. Part of that ability to produce profit must include the practice of shaping workers as a commodity, both intellectually and socially. I'll start by mentioning the current ills of the public schooling system, followed by examples of some of those ills and the way they are a product of capitalist and imperialist society in that system. Schooling is a mechanism of production, followed by further evidence supported by highlighted issues, and I'll conclude with examples of opposition and our role in that opposition. And I have a lot of notes, so I'm going to be looking at them. It's a little hard to read. But I went ahead and listed some common issues that are at the forefront of some of these struggles, forefront of some of these conversations. And, you know, I would argue that if we look at these matters from a Marxist perspective, we can conclude that all are rooted and caused by a capitalist system that perpetuates the enforcement of fear and threats of loss in freedoms, subservience, racism, isolation, competition, meritocracy and manipulation, control, domination, American exceptionalism, blatant lies about history, lack of choice, focus on future careers, hierarchy, and more. That's a nice little Marx quote as well. I believe that being a human includes learning and developing. Obviously, I've kind of begun to discuss the way that capitalism is creating a mechanized working class beginning in childhood. And to be the most effective in that project, right, we need to kind of lessen that learning and developing. We're really manipulated in a way.
Wait, I was distracted. I'm not following my own rules. Hang on. What was that?
That's a nice little Marx quote as well. I believe that being a human includes learning and developing. Obviously.
No. If you work for someone else, you're probably going to be considered working class. Probably not universally. Like if you're like a vice president of like a major company or something, you're going to be. It's more nuanced than that, Gloria. Like basically, if you're fucking rich as fuck, even if you work for someone else, you're going to be considered part of the capitalist class.
We have kind of begun to discuss the way that capitalism is creating a mechanized working class beginning in childhood. And to be the most effective in that project, right, we need to kind of lessen that learning and developing, or really manipulate it in a way that serves the ruling class. So this project must start at a young age, and it strips children of the opportunity to think critically and creatively, to be imaginative, to have the ability to explore their own interests, to develop a sense of self, community, and autonomy. And I believe that the goal of schooling is not to educate, but to mold, intimidate, and control young people into a life of subservience and labor.
Well, that's true enough, but not
I believe
the way
it's important
you
to recognize that this, of course, includes children of working class families. This quote here is what I'm speaking of. This intellectual and physical depression begin the very moment a child steps foot into a learning institution. Lenin states that the bourgeoisie made their own bourgeois politics the cornerstone of the school system, and tried to reduce schooling to the training of docile and efficient servants of the bourgeoisie, to reduce even universal education from top to bottom to the training of docile and efficient servants of the bourgeoisie, of slaves and tools of capital. They never gave a thought to making the school a means of developing the human personality. These are a couple of examples of the ways in which the relationships in a school kind of mirror the paradigm, sorry, I'm a little nervous, of worker and boss. There is one that states that there's a motivation by external rewards, grades not learning, which corresponds to kind of the necessary motivation of working for wages.
Do you guys know how they're trying to abolish grades in school? She just said why. Did everyone catch that? So there are school districts that are trying to abolish all grading. And she just said that the reason that we would want to abolish grades effectively is that what's going on in school is when you have grades, you're basically putting the kids in this model where they're learning how to be basically a good capitalist servant and achieve what the boss wants them to. And that's what grades are. Grades are a reflection on what a good capitalist servant they are. So if you abolish grades, then you get rid of the kind of like worker boss dynamic.
Worker and boss. There is one that states that there's a motivation by external rewards, grades not learning, which corresponds to kind of the necessary motivation of working for wages. And I don't love the language of motivation, just because I believe that we're forced to seek suitable wages that often aren't even suitable out of survival. So I just wanted to mention that piece. But these ideas mean that these larger systems nearly render us incapable of practicing our innate desire to seek knowledge in a larger scope, of ourselves and the world around us. As children, our existence becomes purely about survival. It forces the children to meet the needs of corporatized education and standardized testing scores, further isolating and individualizing schooling, a theme existent throughout the rest of life for the working class. These are some of the foundations of that necessary tactic. They must engage in the labor to survive. While this survival is metaphorical in the context of schooling, there is a direct correlation in the way that it impacts developing minds. There is no agency, no critical thought, no creativity or imagination, no opportunity to seek knowledge and develop that autonomy, as previously mentioned, or much collaboration or building of power and identity. I believe it sort of becomes an internalization of capitalism. Students, again, experience that isolation, that feeling of being a target or a failure, needing to compete. And then one thing I'm quickly going to discuss. Oh, this is an excellent quote from Asada. Schools in America are interested in brainwashing people with Americanism, giving them a little bit of education and training them in skills needed to fill the positions the capitalist system requires. As long as we expect America's schools to educate us, we will remain ignorant.
Wow.
Why aren't we going? There we go. So I wanted to touch on something that was kind of going through my mind that might seem a little out there, but I do believe we can tie some of these themes to
Wait. What does this say? This was made in the UK because it has a U. Labor power in the main is reproduced by 3 interconnected processes. 1, by activities that regenerate the worker outside the production process and allow her to return to it. These include, among a host of others, food, a bed to sleep in, but also care in physical ways that keep a person whole. 2, by activities that maintain and regenerate non-workers outside the production process, those who are the future or past workers, such as children, adults out of the workforce for whatever reason, be it old age, disability, or unemployment. 3, by reproducing fresh workers, meaning childbirth. And this is from a woman named Chidi Bhattacharya, and she's one of the leading abolish the family socialists. We probably should watch more of her stuff. We've only watched her a couple times. Let me just take a screenshot of this. Fun times. All right, social reproduction. Let's go.
Social reproduction. So these are kind of the pieces that make up the theory of social reproduction. And I wanted to highlight point 2, that by activities that maintain and regenerate non-workers outside of the production process, i.e. those who are future or past workers, such as children, I was kind of thinking that, public schools kind of take the reins of that point too, insofar as activities that maintain and regenerate non-workers, right? So the regeneration of the working class must also be supplemented by the information received and practices required of future workers. School is also necessary for childcare, wherein children of working class parents often see their teachers, of whom 76% are women, by the way. They see them often more than their caretakers. With that, the primary caretakers of these young people have no power in what kind of education and therefore molding that their children are receiving. So it may seem like kind of an out there idea, but I do believe that the two can be connected. A little side note, the children of the ruling.
This is actually interesting. Because when we started haranguing James Lindsay on his lack of coverage of social reproduction theory, and again, social reproduction theory is most commonly associated with abolish the family socialists because the family is literally the social unit that reproduces capitalism. James claimed he had adequately covered what he called the problem of reproduction because he had talked about it in his book, The Marxification of Education. And I was like, no, you haven't, James. Like, you absolutely have not covered it. Like, because the social reproduction theory is explicitly about childbirth, which is in the nuclear family. What this person is saying is, listen, I'm not even sure we can say the schools are socially reproducing capitalism, but it kind of seems maybe a little bit like they are, but maybe they aren't. I don't know. Like, she's not even sure of her own argument here. And why this is important is, every single time that James Lindsay says he has covered the problem of reproduction because he's covered the Marxification of education, he's lying. Because again, you listen to real socialists, real communists, and they're kind of like, maybe there's some there, we should probably keep this in mind, but I'm not actually sure this is the main thing. And Bhattacharya, who she's quoting here, is an abolish the family socialist. So, James Lindsay, lying yet again. Let's listen.
Young people have no power in what kind of education and therefore molding that their children are receiving. So it may seem like kind of an out there idea, but I do believe that the two can be connected. A little side note, the children of the ruling class, on the other hand, with access to private and charter schools, those provide the tools and resources that train the next generation of capitalists. I also wanted to mention, I think there's one small contradiction in this argument that I'd be remiss to overlook. And it's something that, again, was cranking through my mind, and I think is an idea worth discussion, in that, schooling can be often utilized or is necessary for childcare, right? And there are predominantly women who are now in this space of like molding and teaching these children before they become workers. And, I believe that the commodity produced by the labor of teaching are the children themselves, right? So it could be kind of argued either way. And that's just something I wanted to put forward. Let's see. All right. So I'm just going to go over a couple of themes that were previously listed about some of the ills in public schooling. And I'll start with the corporatization of education, speaking broadly on charter schools and standardized testings. Of course, we already know that the ruling class, through its exploitation of teachers, outsourcing of workers from garbage projects like Teach for America, which don't really take much education or training, or mostly just like a low paid internship, and are often used in charter schools. And they usually leave when they get their year in of service. It's kind of like AmeriCorps in a certain way. So anyway, garbage projects like Teach for America, charter schools, and standardized testings are a major way of profiting off of the destruction of public schooling, thus making the public schools a bounty of capital off of which to profit more immediately from the looming threat of the destruction of that school. Lack of funding, school closures, forcing entrance into private charters. Those are ways that they can, be a threat and continue creating capital. And since the students are being molded and framed into being workers, it creates more capital in the long term as well. Additionally, things like textbooks, subcontracting buses and food services add more corporate opportunities for schools to become involved. So not only is there a goal to train the next generation, the ruling class is currently making money off of stripping public education to strengthen charters, standardized tests, and corporatization and privatization of schools. Rupert Murdoch mentioned that, he said, we see a $500 billion sector that is waiting desperately to be transformed. A little side note that with the increase in public school closures, which are particularly in urban areas with higher populations of Black and Brown people, charter schools pop up in their place. The arguments for non-union charters often state that the schools are better for these communities, but in what parameters? Once again, the focus is on higher test scores. And there has been no evidence that charters produce these higher test scores, but because of the push for charters and the desire to turn humans into machines, they want to sell them to or send them to for-profit charter institutions that are publicly funded and privately run. And charter schools have an even higher focus on test scores. These claims benefit the structure because, again, test scores are what matter. Additionally, it has been brought to attention that charter schools increase segregation. The 1983 report, Nation at Risk, by the Commission of Excellence in Education, helped lead a panic around crises in the public school system. It was in 1992 that the first charter was opened, and the government and private sectors has since grown to push. Pressure is also placed upon teachers. If their students don't return adequate test scores, they subsequently face higher pressure, lower pay, because their schools get less funding. And I'll also mention here that the man who created the SAT was a eugenicist. So I wanted to talk about not only the school to prison pipeline, but how it generates the next generation of unpaid labor. So there's a podcast I listened to called The Little Red Schoolhouse, which is actually a socialist educators podcast, which I thought was pretty cool. But they stated that This industrial model of schools creates a framework. School, factory, prisons all operate on a similar system with bells, movement, activity, and appraisal scale. School conditions citizens to either be a good little factory worker and have an almost muscle memory in acclimating to a prison environment. To be centrally monitored is a theme in all three. If the process of criminalization and incarceration can begin at a younger and younger age, these are now my words, the rate of incarceration, primarily for for-profit prisons, will continue to create a consistent supply of unpaid labor for the ruling class. We're all probably familiar with the 13th Amendment, which pretty much just states that the abolishment of slavery, except if you're incarcerated. So I'll keep moving though. So the ACLU states that the zero tolerance policies criminalize minor infractions of school rules, like if someone were to get in a light brawl and no one was terribly hurt, while cops in schools lead to students being criminalized for behavior that should be handled inside the school. Students of color are especially vulnerable to push out trends and the discriminatory application of discipline. It's important to note also that the racist nature of schools perpetuates higher incarceration rates for people, particularly men of color. It has been shown that early censor of school misbehavior, again, after very minor and totally natural behaviors of young people that I would argue are influenced by the material conditions of their environment, causes an increase in adult crime, and that there is a direct link between school policing and incarceration. Police presence and metal detectors create a space where there is a lack of feeling of safety for students, fear and anxiety, connection to trauma due to the consistent murders of Black people, and the constant threat of doing something wrong. Just a mention on ethnic studies. We all know right now about the uproar around critical race theory. The attack against teaching historical truths of this country comes at no surprise and has been happening for quite some time. The ruling class must maintain their position. And part of this project comes with the attempts to whitewash the.
So they're saying that critical race theory in schools is an attempt to usurp the ruling class. I want everyone to think about what that means for a second. The ruling class controls the schools. The teachers, the socialists, decided to integrate critical race theory into the schools from a bottom-up perspective in order to teach accurate history that would usurp the ruling class. What does that mean critical race theory is about? If teaching critical race theory in schools is an effort to usurp the ruling class, and that the ruling class is only fighting back against critical race theory in schools because it's taking away their power, what does that mean that teaching critical race theory is about? Communism. What specifically is teaching critical race theory about? Is it about race? Is teaching critical race theory about race? Right. The ruling class is the capitalist bourgeois class. If teaching critical race theory is an effort to usurp the ruling class, the capitalist bourgeois class, then it's not about race at all. It's about abolishing the capitalist ruling class.
Histories of students that students are taught. One example I'll share of racist and imperialist practices in schools is the case of the 2017 Ethnic Studies program in Arizona. The arguments by local lawmakers, who are obvious stakeholders in this matter, were that these classes, and this is directly their language, promote the overthrow of the United States government, promote resentment toward a race or class of people, white wealthy people, are designed for pupils of a particular ethnic group, and advocate ethnic solidarity instead of treatment of pupils as individuals. The attack was seen as unconstitutional and was thrown out by an Arizona judge after a 7-year court battle. Classes teaching the history and providing resources highlighting Mexican American history and perspectives were banned for the entirety of that time. Oh, that doesn't look too good, but it's just fine. So I'll just kind of go over some things that are happening currently, some interventions. The first so once again, I'll kind of go back and say that the aforementioned ideas are all examples of mechanisms to once again isolate, control, and repress working class and Black and brown communities to stamp out knowledge, collective power, and class consciousness.
Oh!
The capitalist class must begin this project once again.
What? Hang on. Again.
So once again, I'll kind of go back and say that the aforementioned ideas are all examples of mechanisms to once again isolate, control, and repress working class and Black and brown communities to stamp out knowledge, collective power, and class consciousness. The capitalist class must begin this project once again from the earliest age possible to develop a subservient source of labor and capital through indoctrination in school structures that mimic the paradigm of worker and boss, isolate students, disallow solidarity and community, perpetuate racial violence, and more, just to recap. So going over teachers' strikes, I'll say that in 2012, one of the greatest teacher strikes in history was in Chicago. There were 26,000 members of the Chicago Teachers Union. They striked for 7 days at 580 schools. The strike occurred in the context of a decades-long political and economic struggle where pro-business forces maneuvered against teachers' unions, which this is commonplace, often bipartisan with support from Democrats and Republicans for control of the country's public education system. A corporate ethos had eclipsed the democratic ideal of public education. Central to the effort to remake schools in the image of the free market was the need to break the power of teachers' unions. And that's just from an article I found by someone named Brandis Friedman. The reasons typically for teacher strikes overall are increased wages for all school workers, increase in school budgets, and smaller classrooms, just to name a couple. That strike in particular garnered much community support from students to families and community organizations. And I would say broadly that most teacher strikes often do from the public. And since the Chicago teacher strikes, there's been more awareness brought and actions around taking back public schools to increase funding for schools and teacher pay alike, once again. And that's pretty much the primary argument, I would say. Also fights to eliminate standardized testing, remove police from schools, and more. And just to mention, just this week, 3 districts in Colorado must close due to staff shortages.
That's
so that's definitely saying something. 2018 had the highest rates of teacher strikes since then. In West Virginia, there were 35,000 teachers. Oklahoma had 45,000, Kentucky 26,000, and within months, 267,000 more teachers in Arizona, Colorado, and North Carolina staged walkouts. And in Denver, again, the 2018 was pretty big, and we had some in 2019, and we're due for some more. So not only should we focus on the fight against schools as a tool for the bourgeois ruling class and make the connection to capitalism in our intervention and strikes, et cetera, because that's one of my arguments for what we should do. We should push for reforms that increase funding for public schooling. Providing resources to public schools are an important step in shifting the paradigm of this structure and challenging the power and control of the bourgeois ruling class to determine and undermine the power and potential of true education without limitations, deprivation, and threats, with the aim of uplifting the children of working class families to grow into actualized, empowered members of the world around them to forward the goal of liberation. We must intervene in this promising trend of uprisings amongst educators.
We must intervene.
Promising uprise with the caveat that while teacher union densities have gone from 64% in 84 to 49% today. But I believe with this trend, we're looking at something hopeful. Lenin states that we shall only succeed when we discard the old bourgeois prejudices. This is where it is your union's task to draw the broad mass of teachers into your family, to educate the most backward sections of the teaching profession, to bring them under general proletarian policy and weld them together into one common organization. Just an argument for the strengthening and unification of teachers into strong unions. Abolitionist education, I'll just check off real quick.
This is something that I actually follow. I follow the Abolitionist Teaching Network. We've done a lot of stuff. We've actually been in we've done spy streams with their webinars before. Bettina Love is a professor of education at Columbia University, and I've seen Bettina in person at the Socialism Conference.
Quick, it's something that's coming up in popularity and awareness in public schooling right now. But the idea is, of course, just to abolish the school system as it is. And it has an emphasis on racial justice in particular. There's a woman named Bettina Love who is at the forefront of this fight, and she believes that education should be part of one's activism, for it to be a part of how one sees the world. She argues that educators should infuse their approach with the urgency of an abolitionist, teaching about racial violence and oppression, as well as resistance, joy, and social change. I just hit 20 minutes. I'm almost done. She is critical towards character ed programs and charter school corporations that push grit and resiliency on dark children in particular, subjecting students to cruel anti-Black, quote unquote, Hunger Games that force compliance.
Wow.
She argues against whitewash reforms and educator training programs that ignore the systems that continue to make our schools places of harm and injustice for dark children. That was from an article written by Leighton Rowell and Virginia Prescott. So the conclusions, where do we go from here? Our schools are in a desperate need of complete overhaul in a lot of different ways, those that I touched on, and it's very kind of intricate. There's a lot to it. But in one of the readings in Public Education and Marxism, Gabriela Lomelas Paz states that schools are central institutions of modern capitalist societies. We must reject the idea that they are eternal and immutable, and that the natural way of learning takes place within the four walls of a classroom with fixed times, grade levels, scores, etc. Schools are products of history. They appear in a specific moment and are therefore not natural or eternal. The learning institutions of today are destined to disappear or change along with the society that gave rise to them. As revolutionary socialists, we must continue the fight for free, quality, and empowering education from beginning to end, and to connect learning with liberation. We must destroy capitalism to allow children to grow in creativity, critical thinking, knowledge of the true structures and history of this country, and collectivity for the common good.
Hang on. That last line, though. That last line. Did everyone catch that? Hang on.
Institutions of today are destined to disappear or change along with the society that gave rise to them. As revolutionary socialists, we must continue the fight for free, quality, and empowering education from beginning to end, and to connect learning with liberation. We must destroy capitalism to allow children to grow in creativity, critical thinking, knowledge of the true structures and history of this country, and collectivity for the common good of all.
Hello!
While seeing that all struggles are connected, it is important to recognize the need to intervene in school and teachers' fights and further connect the fight against capitalism within that context. We must intervene in teachers' strikes to win other working class educators to our mission for the liberation of all, young and old. That in the hands of the ruling class, education is used as a tool of social control. In the hands of oppressed, it is a tool of liberation.
Bing, 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 bing,
and
bing.
I have one more.
Oh man, I gotta clip that. Hang on. That was an excellent clip. This whole presentation's been kind of blah, but that last clip, man, that was everything. That was everything rolled up into one nugget. It was everything I wanted. I'm so happy. Oh, come on. No. Don't do this to me. Record. Don't do this to me. Come on. Record. Oh, come on. Seriously. My clipping tool is not working. Hang on. Oh, and now it's just all shut down. I think. Pretty sure just all shut down. New. recording. Record, mother effers. Apparently my clipping tool has decided it doesn't want to work right now. Just really doesn't. It just really doesn't want to work right now. All right. Well, let me try one more time. No, my clipping tool is pretty much shit the bed. It's like, nope, no bitch. Nope, we're not doing it. We're not doing it today. All right, well, I guess I'm just going to have to make that clip later then. That's fine. Let's just listen to it one more time for fun.
To them. As revolutionary socialists, we must continue the fight for free and empowering education.
Now I can't even hear sound. What is going on? Now I can't even hear sound. Hang on. Let me just force quit my clipping tool. My clipping tool has hijacked my computer in some way. We need to control alt delete this shit. Force quit. Screen flow. I don't care.
From beginning to end.
Now I can't even hear sound. Maybe if I do a refresh.
So my presentation this evening is titled The Miseducation of the Proletariat, Capitalism, Indoctrination,
hang on. I need to shut off my sound and turn it back on because that's the way the world works.
And the early exploitation of children in public education. I'm really going to be focusing on younger students. Again, I work in an elementary school, and that's just kind of what got my gears going around this idea. So these are just a couple of funny little things.
All right, I think I'm back there.
That I found.
Still can't hear sound.
We'll take a second to enjoy those before we get rolling.
No, my sound is completely.
All right.
Wow.
So the premise. Capitalism needs to turn everything, including human beings, and apparently the not yet even born, into commodities, mattering only in their ability and potential power to produce profit for owners of the economy.
All right, what did I do
that may be a familiar quote to some of you.
You guys can hear me, right? You guys can hear me.
I'll let you read the other one and just begin by saying that the suggestion I'm going to make is that all of the ills of the public schooling, from early education on our practice of indoctrination and early exploitation of children of working class families, and that schools broadly are a mechanism of control to produce the next generation of subservient, productive workers. Part of that ability to produce profit must include the practice of shaping workers as a commodity, both intellectually and socially. I'll start by mentioning the current ills of the public schooling system, followed by examples of some of those ills and the way they are a product of
All right, I'm back. I'm back. Thank you, Renan, for the super chat. Thank you, Renan. Guess we are abolishing the capitalist version of schools in order to grow into a Marxist school system. Yep, that is absolutely correct, Renan. Okay, hang on one second, guys. I am still not hearing sound on my end. And if we don't hear sound on my end, then there's no more stream because I need to be able to hear sound on my end. I don't know why we're not hearing sound on my end. Hang on, let me just try one more thing. Hang on. I'm troubleshooting, guys. Please bear with me. Let me just test something here. Oh, you want to know why? Because it selected a completely different input. Fixed it. It selected a completely different input. Hang on. Now I've got some sort of weird playback on my computer that I don't know where it's coming from. Okay, I fixed it. Troubleshooting. Yeah, so my computer decided to completely change my sound settings. So we're just going to go on to the next presentation. Thank you guys for allowing me that moment of troubleshooting. I really do appreciate it. Hey, as a reminder, we have been streaming for about 2 hours, and I am not yet halfway to my super chat goal. So if you guys want me to stream for longer tonight, let's send in some super chats. Show some love, man. We're doing this on a Saturday night, okay? We're going to be getting into our next presentation from the Denver Communists now that I have fixed the sound on my computer. I apologize for the delay and the technical difficulties. And we're going to be jumping right into our next presentation, The Revolutionary War and the Myth of Democracy.
George Orwell in 1984 said, "Who controls the past controls the future." And
true,
that's
so
part of the
true.
reason that history is so relevant to us. And
So true,
there's probably
communists.
never been a better example of that than the American myth of democracy, the revolution, the Constitution, etc. And it also means that part of our project, knowing the present and the future, is to control the narrative of the past. So it's important for us to understand this. So to understand the revolution in 1776.
Did he literally just say that part of our project has got to be controlling the narrative of the past, quoting Orwell in 1984? Seriously? Did that just happen? Hang on. Our project, being the present and the future, is to control the narrative of the past. Holy shit. A communist literally just unironically quoted George Orwell in 1984 and said, "We need to do that." Holy shit. Benjamin Jackson, thank you for the super chat. I really do appreciate it. I just love these moments. I love these moments where it's just like, there's just no mistaking this. Let's listen again.
George Orwell in 1984 said, "Who controls the past controls the future." And that's part of the reason that history is so relevant to us. And there's probably never been a better example of that than the American myth of democracy, the revolution, the Constitution, etc. And it also means that part of our project, knowing the present and the future, is to control the narrative of the past. So it's important for us to understand this.
Part of our project is to control the narrative of the past. You are right. This is so much worse than we thought. I keep telling people. People think I'm just complaining. People think I'm just complaining about communism on the internet. People think I just complain about conservative influencers because, like, I'm jealous of them or something, or it's some sort of, like, clout push. People think that that's why I'm complaining. No, I'm complaining because it's so much worse than what conservative influencers are telling people. And I know how much stuff conservative influencers don't cover. I know how much stuff conservative influencers hide from their audience. Based on the sheer volume of stories that I've come across that never get coverage. And then eventually, when you watch Real Socialists with me, you realize, holy shit, my conservative influencers have lied to me because they haven't told me what's really going on, and it's so much worse than anything I thought it was. Case in point. Let's just listen to that one more time because that's really alarming.
George Orwell in 1984 said, "Who controls the past controls the future." And that's part of the reason that history is so relevant to us. And there's probably never been a better example of that than the American myth of democracy, the revolution, the Constitution, etc. And it also means that part of our project, knowing the present and the future, is to control the narrative of the past. So it's important for us to understand this. So to understand the revolution in 1776 in what became the US, we need to look at the class structure. First of all, the US, the American colonies, were not a capitalist society at the time. There were pockets of capitalism within it. However, the class structure, economic structure of the North was that the dominant group were the subsistence farmers and small commercial farmers. There were also artisans in the city. They would be considered what we would now call petty bourgeois. That is, they worked for themselves. They were silversmiths, shoemakers, etc. They may have an employee or two, but for the most part, they were independent, petty bourgeois. There were indentured servants more in the South than the North. Those were temporary proletarians in the sense that were working off their passage to the New World and then would go off on their own, usually become small business people or farmers or whatever. There was small industrial capital. It did exist. There were ironworks, shipbuilding, shipping, and so forth. Percentage of the population that was actually wage workers was very small. I don't know for sure. My guess is 5 to 10%. And the dominant ruling class in the North were the merchant capitalists, those traders who bought at a low price and sold at a high price. In the South, this structure was similar to the North. There was less industry. And of course, in terms of agriculture, it was dominated by slave production and more use of indentured servants. So what existed in Americas, or in North America, the British colonies at the time, was a colonial settler state. The dynamic of all the modes of production listed above before were expansion. That is, replacement of what was primarily in the North, primitive communism by the indigenous people, by private property modes of production.
Private property modes of production
were in fundamental conflict with the native population. In some ways, it was similar to Israel today. Both of the colonies, Israel before and then the colonies, were backed by British imperialism. They served British interests. They made money for commercial capital in Britain. And in the case of Israel, it was a strategic advantage to the British. However, the local economy outgrew the colonial control. At one point, something like a quarter or a fifth of all English people lived in the North American colonies. So they became much more robust as an economy and began to develop their own separate interests from the British. This was the contradictory nature of the colonial settler state. On one hand, it was opposed to British imperialism, but as Zen said, it wanted to set up its own colonial or its own empire, I should say. The grievances that the settlers had against Britain were many. The British wanted to continue to exploit the colonies as they had before. They wanted to suppress local manufacturers to make sure that people in the colonies had to buy British goods. They wanted to tax the colonists to pay for British troops who had just fought the French and Indian War. There was the Stamp Act that they opposed, the tea monopoly, which caused the Boston Tea Party. And this British control hurt both the merchants and for the merchants, trade had to go through Britain. And this pissed off the merchants. They didn't like that. They wanted to be able to be independent traders. Democracy was an issue. No taxation without representation was a common.
Hey, Reagan, you missed where this guy said, you're going to fucking love this. I know you had to go to, I guess you're excused to go to a wedding, but like, you just missed this guy saying You just missed this guy unironically quoting George Orwell, saying that it's the job of the socialists to take control of the narrative of the past.
Slogan, and the colonists didn't like the idea of royal governments and royal governors controlling their colonies. So it limited local democracy. And one issue that is sometimes neglected and something we should understand clearly is that there was a conflict between the British and the colonists over the expansion of the colonies west. The British wanted to stop American colonization at the Appalachian Mountains. This was for their own economic reasons. They wanted to continue the fur trade with the native people on the other side of the mountains. And in order to do that, they had to stop the colonists from going over there. So this is a key distinction or key conflict that caused the war. And on that side, you could say certainly the colonists were on the wrong side. There was class struggle within the colonial American settler formation, both before, during, and after the Revolution. There were merchants and large landlords that had 1/2 of all the wealth in the colonies. There was an increased concentration of wealth. There was a real class struggle going on between person creditors, between the small group of wage workers and capitalists, between merchants and farmers, between the slave owners and the slaves. And this class struggle should not be ignored. It was a real part of the process. But as Howard Zinn points out in the People's History, some of the class struggle that was engaged in was against the or patriotic wing of the ruling class. It is sometimes presented that the poor and the American rich people united against the British, and that's all there was to it. It was a lot more complicated than that. So the poor were divided over the revolution. There were regulators in North Carolina who were small farmers who sat out the revolution. They didn't see any need to support the side. There were New York tenants who supported the British landlords over the Americans. There was, of course, the continual class struggle between the slaves and the slave owners. The British opportunistically offered freedom to the slaves who supported the British. This is quite opportunistic, but it did influence the opinions of some of the slaves. So the context was that
no, I don't think Reagan got married to Fluffy Cow. She just went to a wedding. I don't think it was her wedding.
This is still a fundamental contradiction.
You can still marry Reagan if you want to.
The leadership of the revolution on a national level was planters and merchants. The Continental Congress, for example, was made up of these groups. You couldn't be an artisan or a small farmer and go to Philadelphia for 6 months and sit in the Continental Congress. That would not work. So the leadership at the national level were the upper class of the.
Okay. This is important. Everyone pay attention. So what he's saying is, I know this guy's a little dry. Yo, Bot, that's a very nice super chat. Thank you. I appreciate that. Arousing, heart-filled super chat. So guys, what this guy is saying is really important. Remember, he has already told us that he believes, Bot queered the chat. Exactly. This guy has already told us that he believes it's the job of socialists to control the narrative around the American Revolution because he who controls the past controls the future. And now what he's saying is the American Revolution was a revolution of the bourgeois class. Because if you were a worker, if you were part of the proletariat class, you couldn't take part in the American Revolution because you couldn't just pick up and go to Philadelphia for 6 months. So it was the people who had the ability to go to Philadelphia to be part of the First Continental Congress. That was the bourgeois class, the owner class. So what they're saying is America was founded as a fundamentally oppressive state. Does everyone understand that? America was founded based on oppression because it was a bourgeois revolution. It was not a worker revolution. It was a bourgeois revolution. Does everyone understand that? Please let me know in the chat. Let's listen again.
As opposed to natives. This is still the fundamental contradiction in the revolutionary period. The
Fundamental
leadership of the revolution
contradiction.
on a national level was planters and merchants. The Continental Congress, for example, was made up of these groups. You couldn't be an artisan or a small farmer and go to Philadelphia for 6 months and sit in the Continental Congress. That would not work. So the leadership at the national level were the upper class of the colonies. George Washington was reported to be the richest man in what became. At the local level, there was more lower class leadership of the conflict, and there was conflict between the two over the aims and methods of struggle. The ruling class feared the lower class, and they feared radicalization at the local level. As one of the articles that we read for this said, in the natural history, they tend to fall into the hands of men holding more and more advanced doctrine, less and less restrained by traditional attachment to the old order of things. Therefore,
Pop quiz for the chat. Who do socialists believe started capitalism in the first place? Pop quiz. Who do socialists believe started capitalism? When did capitalism begin? The farmers. The farmers are bourgeois. The farmers, the farmers, the farmers, the farmers. Because farmers privatized land. The farmers were the ones who said, this is our land and we're taking this land and we're going to use this land in order to make money by being farmers. So yeah, George Washington was a farmer, but he was a really good farmer that made a lot of money. He was a landowner. Remember, landowner back then is going to be part of the bourgeois class.
For the social consequences of a revolution are not necessarily shaped by the conscious or unconscious desires of those who started it, but more likely by the desires of those who come into control of it at the later stages of development. This is one thing that the upper class, the ruling class of the colonies, so-called patriotic ruling class, feared. They needed the masses to win the war against the British, but they feared them. They're afraid of attacks on property. So the results of the revolution were, as one of the articles put it, it was the decisive entry of the masses into the stage of history that stamped this process as a revolution.
Well, what communists believe is that the communists believe that the land belongs to the collective and is under the collective care. So yeah, I mean, effectively, but it's not like they're calling for feudalism. That's not how they believe it's going to work out. But yeah, communists don't believe that land should be privately owned. They believe it should be under the collective care of the indigenous people.
Clear about what they were doing or not, the formerly passive and even apathetic masses awoke to political and social consciousness and seized their destiny in their hands and embarked upon a heroic struggle against both British impositions and their own native American ruling class. However, we need to understand that this revolution was a limited revolution. It was a political revolution in that part of the ruling class was expelled. That is the Tory, British supporting ruling class often lost some of their property and so forth, and the British themselves. So that wing of the ruling class was expelled. But the American wing of the ruling class, or the patriotic wing, was pretty much the same after the revolution as it was before. So it was only a limited political revolution. In spite of that, it was also the first stage of a bourgeois revolution. It consolidated the conditions for capitalism in the US. Now, this is on the, there's debates about what a bourgeois revolution is, and this is on the consequentialist theory of revolution, of bourgeois revolution, that is looking at the consequences of the revolution rather than who led it. Because the people who led it were certainly not industrial capitalists in the modern sense. They were merchant capitalists and slave owners. But what it did is it opened up the prospects of capitalist development in the United States by creating one market, taking down tariff barriers between states, creating one uniform currency, creating a national government which could enforce property rights. So it was the first step of the bourgeois revolution. There was real progress, settlers. There was freedom of religion that came about, although not immediately. There was more democracy. There was end of royal control, less tax burden, and again, the ability to go west, which was a very contradictory thing. For merchants, there was free commerce, right to trade without going through British ports. So what this revolution did was it created the beginnings of an American empire that went past the mountains. And later in 1802,
Wait, what?
The Louisiana Purchase took place.
I just saw Cassandra McDonald's spoiler of Joker 2. Has anyone actually seen Joker 2? Because it just got ruined for me. And if it gets ruined for me, it's going to get ruined for all of you. I mean, I'd already heard from so many people that Joker 2 sucked. And I was like, really? Like, how bad could it be? How bad could it be? How bad could they make it? All right, you've seen it. I need you to confirm this. Confirm or deny. Cassandra McDonald tweeted, they made the Joker get gang raped, and then killed him. Don't go see it. Is that true? Did they actually make the Joker get gang raped? Sorry, I already did it. Sorry. Fucking seriously? Fucking seriously? Fucking seriously? Fuck these people, man. Seriously? They had to ruin it. They fucking had to ruin it. Wow. By the prison police. They had to ruin the iconic. They had to. They had to. Of course. They had to. All right. I apologize if I ruined everyone's day. I just lost like 15 viewers on you. They're like, fuck no, you're not spoiling this movie for me. Oh, man. You mentioned you had a great butt when you streamed Fuentes versus... No, you can... Listen. Listen. I appreciate... You know what? This is a really good attempt. I will say, this is the best attempt that someone's ever made to try to get me to show my ass on screen. And I appreciate it. I have a great ass. I have the type of ass that women pay money for. For real. But you're not going to get to see it on screen. No. Mm-mm. Nope. Mm-mm. Nope. Mm-mm. Nope. But I appreciate it. Well, who knows? Maybe I won't even get invited to the next AFPAC at this rate. Yeah, I think that Dalton was not being serious. The director of the movie seems to have done this in order to stick it to the fans of the previous movie. He had insulted the fans repeatedly. Yeah, I mean, that makes sense to me. That makes sense. It was too perfect. The movie was too good. Why did Joaquin Phoenix agree to that? Lame. Fake and gay. Fake and gay. All right, back to socialism.
The whole middle of the country. And then, of course, later, the Mexican-American War took the Southwest, and then, the Northwest was taken as well. So it was a new imperialist power based on the expropriation and genocide of the native population and the consolidation of slavery. Of course, the second phase of the bourgeois revolution, the Civil War, resulted in the overthrow of slavery. But at this point, in 1776, 1781, slavery was consolidated. So the consolidation of the revolution that took place, the lower class democracy that existed during and after the revolution,
Thanks,
during
Fluffy
the Articles
Cow.
of Confederation threatened the ruling class. They feared the debtors would refuse to pay debts. They wanted a constitution which could consolidate ruling class control. And as Alexander Hamilton, the famous Broadway star, put it, all communities divide themselves into the few and the many, the rich and well-born, and masses of people.
Thank you.
People are turbulent and changing. They seldom judge or determine right. Give there to the first class, that is the rich, a distinct permanent share in the government. Nothing but a permanent body can check the imprudence of democracy. James Madison, who was seen as more on the left in the sense that he became a Democratic Republican rather than a Federalist, put it this way. He said he wanted a strong federal government because a rage for paper money, for the abolition of debts, for an equal division of property, or any other
Well, it doesn't surprise me that Lady Gaga was good, because Lady Gaga is legitimately a good actor when she does these more creepy type things. Like, she was great in American Horror Story. So I had no questions about Lady Gaga, but like, they made it a musical and the Joker got gang raped. Lame.
Proper or wicked project will be less apt to pervade the whole body of the union than a particular member of it. So he's afraid if the states continue to have most of the control, it would result in these wicked projects. So the question comes up, was the Constitution of 1789, was it a consolidation of the American Revolution or a counter-revolution? Well, it depends on your evaluation of the revolution itself.
Am I going to see it? I kind of feel like I have to see it, but I don't want to. I was thinking about going to see it tomorrow. Like, I was thinking about dragging Victor with me. But, like, I kind of feel like I have to, but I don't know if I want to. I don't know. We'll see. Anyway, let's focus.
Those who stress the democratic aspect of the revolution say that the Constitution was a counter-revolution. Those the ruling class leadership of the revolution, such as Howard Zinn, for example, say no, it was not a.
Peter, you've been around long enough to know better. You really have. You've been around long. They don't have any views. He doesn't have any influence. That's conservative bullshit propaganda. That's conservative bullshit talking points. We don't do that here. This is a revolutionary communist explaining to you what revolutionary communists think. I don't give a flying fuck if this only has 3 views on YouTube, because how they're organizing has nothing to do with YouTube. They just put it up there for posterity. So it doesn't matter. He is a cog in the machine, just like every other cog in the machine. The value of this is he is telling you what they believe. And what they believe is incredibly consistent across all fucking communists. So the point of this is to listen to them, to understand what they believe. And if you're not going to do that, go somewhere else. It doesn't matter if he's boring. Seriously. We're descending into retardia. I can feel it. We're descending into retardia. It's going to be that time of night. This is not to entertain you. This is to teach you what they think. This is not reality TV. The media portrayed the Joker as a godly figure for incels. My theory is that Joaquin accepted it so he can distance himself from that character. Yeah, that's probably true, Rottweiler. All right, we've got 5 more minutes of this. Everyone needs to put on their big boy pants and listen.
Consolidate. It was not a counter-revolution, but a consolidation of the revolution. And in fact, it was both. It was a consolidation of ruling class leadership that had existed during the revolution, but it was also an overthrow of the radicalism of the revolution, which took place in the early years. So how should we see the revolution? Well, we should say class struggle in a colonial settler state. It's an example of class struggle in history.
How should we see the revolution as a class struggle within a colonial settler state? The colonial settler state, to Fluffy Cow Respector's point earlier, is the United States.
Of the radicalism of the revolution, which took place in the early years. So how should we see the revolution? Well, we should say class struggle in a colonial settler state. It's an example of class struggle in history, and it validates Marx's view of class struggle and material interests as a motive force of history. However, even the lower class struggle was also bound up with new colonialism against the natives. I believe that there is no side to cheer for from a Marxist viewpoint. Those who claim the heritage of the American Revolution for Marxism, I believe, are wrong. However, the example of the need for revolution when class struggle reaches a fever pitch and radicalism and organization are lessons we can draw out of it. We need to recognize that there were major gains, but see it in context. It's very different from the French Revolution, where there is unambiguous class struggle that we can cheer on. In general, however, I think the idea of Marxists going back in history and picking sides before industrial capitalism is irrelevant, unless you have a time machine. There could be no Marxists before the rise of industrial capitalism. Therefore, there could be no solid Marxist intervention in the American Revolution. Howard Zinn's overall view in the People's History of the United States is perhaps a little too cynical, but he says the upper classes, to rule, needed to make concessions to the middle class without damage to their own wealth or power at the expense of slaves, Indians, and poor whites. Brought loyalty. And to bind that loyalty, the ruling group found a wonderfully useful device, the language of liberty and equality, which could unite enough whites to fight a revolution against England without ending slavery or inequality. So the lessons for today are that American patriotism is not a forerunner of Marxism. The Communist Party in the 1930s said that communism is 20th century Americanism. This is absolutely not the case. The Constitution, although to give it credit.
So is it like Verlinator? Verlinator, is that right? You know that Marxists come in all ages, right? Seriously.
Was one of the most
Peter is in the land of retardia tonight.
Advanced, most democratic constitutions in the world at the time. It was not democratic. In fact, it was specifically set up to restrict democracy. So my contention is that in those days, there was not a dominant mode of production in the United States, which would have allowed the rich to just economically dominate the government. Therefore, they had to use structural methods to keep their power. Some of those included property qualifications, exclusion of women from voting, exclusion of Black people from voting, although everybody knows the 3/5 compromise, where the gave the Southern ruling class more votes, even though the slaves got no votes. They had things like the Senate was elected not by the people, but by the legislators. So they had all these structures, the balance of power and the division of power and all that kind of stuff was set up to check democracy.
So like
these because otherwise they were afraid that, as had happened during the revolution and the rebellions, Shays Rebellion and so forth, that they would lose their wealth and power. So they needed these limitations. As capitalism developed, it became more and more impossible for capitalism itself to dominate the state without structural methods as strongly. So they got rid of the legislative election of the Senate. They expanded the franchise and all that. Now, this was not a free gift from the ruling class. People fought and died in order to do that. However, the capitalists were able to give it because they could now control the government directly without these structural limitations. So let's see. So the US Constitution, in summary, was the formal basis of US capitalism and imperialism, and is today. So to win people to socialist revolution, we must win them to reject Constitution and American patriotism. I'm not saying that's the first thing we raise with people.
And this is why we listen to the boring presentations. I wonder if my clipping tool is working yet. Let's get my clipping tool back up. It's going to open 8,000 windows on my desktop. We're going to have to work through that. Yeah, he did just say the Constitution. Yeah, he did. Yeah. All right, my clipping tool is working very hard on starting up again. Let's just listen to that again. This is why we listen to the boring presentations, everyone. This is why. This is why right here. Hang on, recover my documents, clipping tool. Do it. Okay, hang on. Hang on. All right, we'll listen to this again while my clipping tool is starting up.
US capitalism and imperialism, and is today. So to win people to socialist revolution, we must win them to reject Constitution and American patriotism. I'm not saying that's the first.
To win people to a socialist revolution, we must get them to reject the Constitution and American patriotism. We sat through a boring-ass presentation for 19 minutes just to get that clip. All right, my clipping tool is starting up. It's opening 8,000 windows on my desktop right now as we speak. That's a great clip, though. Hang on. Hang on. We're going to get that clip. Let's just let this play a little bit more.
First thing we raise with people, but it is something that we're going to have to win people to in the course of socialist revolution.
Oh, it's not the first thing we tell people. I wonder why that's not the first thing they tell people.
In doing so, not supporting the project of 1776, we can use some of the concepts that they cynically employed in the Declaration of Independence. Like the one, our favorite one, I'm sure, is the right of revolution, where Jefferson said, you know,
Wow. This is an amazing clip. And I just need my clipping tool to cooperate with me. It's continuing to open windows on my desktop, but hopefully it'll get over that very soon. Yeah, see, Peter, see. Now it doesn't so much matter how many views this has, does it? That's the point I was making to you earlier. Now that this isn't even influential. Who is this guy? Who's listening to him? How many views? It doesn't even fucking matter to you now, does it? That's the point, bro. That's the point. It's always the point. It's perpetually the point. Oh, hang on a sec, guys. I'm sorry. My clipping tool totally crashed on me. Hey, if anyone wants to send in a super chat to fund this because no one else is listening to this stuff on the internet, please feel free to do so. My clipping tool is opening 200 windows on my desktop right now. All right. Let's see if I can actually get it to clip. Let's see if it's configured correctly. Let's see if it'll mess with my sound. Well, it's partially my fault because I stretched my clipping tool to the very limits of its function. So it's partially my fault. Okay, let's see if I can get it to record. Come on. Nope, still not recording. Trying it again. Oh, it's recording. Hang on.
Directly without these structural limitations. So let's see. So the US Constitution, in summary, was the formal basis of US capitalism and imperialism, and is today. So to win people to socialist revolution, we must win them to reject Constitution and American patriotism. I'm not saying that's the first thing we raise with people, but it is something that we're going to have to win people to in the course of socialist revolution. In doing so, not supporting the project of 1776, we can use some of the concepts that they cynically employed in the Declaration of Independence. Like the one, our favorite one, I'm sure, is the right of revolution, where Jefferson said, you know, you need a revolution every 20 years and all that kind of stuff. That right of revolution is somehow never really discussed by bourgeois politicians and so forth as a founding idea, but it's something we ought to push. So to summarize, today, the workers have no government and no country. We should be pushing not Americanism, but working class internationalism. Okay.
Hello. No, go back. I wasn't done with that yet. Go back. That was fucking great. That was great. Let me just make sure my clip saves. Save my clip, you fucking tool. Save it. Save my clip. Man, create new document. Yes. Got it. The clip is saved. Dang. That was something, man. Renan, by the way, thanks for saving me from seeing Joker 2. Here, take the money I saved. Hey, I appreciate that. Hey, if anyone wants to donate their ticket money to Joker 2 to me, please feel free to do so. Please feel free. I got another super chat as well. Let me just acknowledge that real quick. Hang on. Let me update my progress goal. I am now $20 away from the goal for tonight, so I do appreciate it, guys. And I don't feel like you insulted me. You said I don't feel like don't worry about it, bro. Don't worry about it. Listen. If I find a clip like that, that is everything. No, I didn't know Joseph. Joseph always with the inappropriate comment. All right, well that was pretty great. Hey, who wants to keep watching Socialism with me? You guys want to watch one or two more? I've got two more pulled up. This actually could be a really good one. This is called On Romancing Illegality. So now Andy No, when he sent out the clip from the Denver Communists the other day, he said that the Denver Communists were Antifa. Now, communists are not always Antifa, and Antifa are always communists, but not all communists are Antifa. But I trust Andy No that he knows what he's talking about, and so I find it really interesting that it kind of seems like they've got an Antifa presentation on their page. All the super chats are added. They're all added. Don't worry about it. I have a tally on my desktop. So where do I keep my clips? I keep them on the YouTube channel. I keep them on my Substack, carlin.substack.com. I have a video vault section on my Substack. This is why I tell you guys to sign up for my Substack, because I literally have a whole video archive on my Substack where the clips go. You can find the link in the description below. All right, let's see it on romancing illegality.
The topic tonight is on romanticizing illegality. And we read two pieces. The first one was by Trotsky from 1913. It's called Why Marxists Oppose Individual Terrorism. And the first thing I want to point out is to note the word individual. It's the noun. It's not the noun, but the adjective that Marxists object to. White terror, no good. Individual terror, no good. Red terror, not so bad, right? And the same goes for insurrection and lots of other things. The same goes for insurrection in terms of like mass, like we want to see one big mass insurrection that brings down the state. So this piece, Trotsky's piece, was a Marxist response to the Narodniks, many of whose basic ideas continue to predominate 150 years later. The Narodniks were sort of anarchist peasants, intellectuals in Russia. And few advocate for actual terrorism nowadays, but these ideas apply to lesser illegal tactics too, like vandalism, sabotage, etc. So first thing to make clear is that Trotsky makes clear is that there's no objection on moral grounds to any tactic that advances class struggle. And he points out the bourgeois hypocrisy around this. He says the bourgeois state and its laws are nothing but an apparatus for capitalist terror, for white terror. And he also says, pay no mind to the bought and paid for moralists who, in response to any terrorist act, make solemn declarations about the absolute value of human life. And elsewhere, he talks about how empty that is when our class remains dominated by the investing class. He calls terrorism substitutionist, individualist, and elitist. It substitutes the heroic, in quotes, activities of a small group for the coordinated activity of the class. There's no need to have the organized masses behind you if this is your tactic.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me.
And I should say that the Narodniks were assassinating czars and police officers and bombing places and so that's what he's saying, like those quote unquote heroic activities. So he says, contrary to the anarchists and in direct struggle against them, socialists reject attempts to artificially force the development of society and to substitute chemical preparations for the insufficient revolutionary strength of the proletariat.
I don't know about that.
And he also highlights that we have different goals. Marxists believe in working class self-emancipation, socialism from below. Anarchists reject the working class, or many do, as the agent of change, favoring the enlightened few instead. For instance, going back to just the 60s, the Weather Underground believed that white workers were incapable of radicalization and were part of the problem.
I need to go to the little socialist room, guys. I will be right back. Please continue watching. Let me know if I miss anything.
So that strategically orients them in a very different direction. And wanted to bring up that there's a great anecdote in Tariq Ali's biography of Lenin called The Dilemmas of Lenin.
Hang on. I got a couple super chats. I want to acknowledge them. Thank you. I do appreciate it. You're a late V Tolkien fan. I appreciate it, guys. All right, I gotta go pee. I'll be right back. Please keep watching.
Requested a meeting with Kropotkin in 1919 after the Bolsheviks won, and he explained the decisive factor that helped him solve the dilemma between anarchism and socialism. He said it was the necessity of mass struggle. Only with the masses, through the masses. All other methods, including those of the anarchists, have been relegated to the limbo of history. They only demoralize people who, in one way or another, have been drawn out on that old, worn-out path. So Trotsky says that terrorism reduces self-activity. That's one of the big problems. It requires organizational forms and methods that are inherently unaccountable to the working class. The tactics require a highly conspiratorial minority to carry out its actions, and therefore they are antagonistic to the development of a mass movement. It betrays the principles of workers' democracy and abandons the task of building class power. It encourages passivity, leads to disillusionment and apathy, reduces interest in self-organization and self-education. And Trotsky contrasts this with the strike. And he says that the strike is the method of struggle that flows directly from workers' strategic position in the production process.
All right,
and it increases self-confidence. It does the opposite. Whereas terrorism belittles the role of the masses in their own consciousness. It reconciles them to powerlessness and turns their hopes toward a great liberator who will accomplish their mission for them.
So, I mean, this is actually kind of interesting, right? Because isn't this basically giving the middle finger to Antifa? Now, again, Antifa are communists. Antifa are anarcho-communists. But I also think it's important to be nuanced, and it kind of seems like the revolutionary communists are saying, that's not cool, bro.
Another criticism is that it isolates revolutionaries from workers. Trotsky says it makes it easier for the state to drive a wedge between the workers' movement and revolutionaries. But perhaps most damning of all, it's ineffectual.
Wait, did he actually just tweet this? Are you serious? James update. Did James actually just tweet this? Seriously? If you're messing with Mimi's account, he did! He did tweet it! Breaking news! James Lindsay hates Catholics! James is so triggered by the Groypers. James thinks MAGA should be a Jewish liberal movement. So true. The Groypers have broken James! Look, he's got Stepmom. James is retweeting Stepmom because Stepmom's one of the only people that are actually sticking by him. Oh! Oh! It's MAGA, not make America Catholic again. And he specifically had to say it wasn't Christian, but you know that's Catholic. Oh! For almost 2 years, there has undeniably been a strong psyop to convince people that I hate Christians against all and considerable evidence. It's being pushed vigorously again now. It's obviously false. Why has this been going on? The only thing I can possibly think is that the enemy using conservatives or radicals dressed as conservatives as a tool does not want my voice reaching Christian ears and seeks to block both of their welcome of me and my willingness to speak of them. Or to them. This is big if true. Hillary Clinton's a communist. Oh my God. Man. I'm so happy this past week stopped politics from being a religion for me. Might have to unfollow a lot of accounts, though. Oh, please do, James. Please do. Please do. Really need to talk about how securing religious liberty and free speech, which is classic American liberal bedrock, protects churches and believers rather than harming them. A secular state is a guarantor of genuine faith. Wow. James is an atheist and he's telling people about genuine faith. Okay, I'm going to stop. I'll do this all night. James Lindsay's Twitter account is the most entertaining thing in the world to me right now. It's so ridiculous. Yeah, you can't be a liberal and a conservative at the same time, James. Anyway. Oh shit, you guys can't see this. You guys can't hear this. Hang on. There you go. Now you can. Oh, browser lost sound. Hang on. Wow. Wow. See, and people thought I had a meltdown. People thought I have never done anything remotely close to this. Not remotely. I haven't seen it yet. I've just heard tell from the Twitters, Kenneth. I haven't seen it yet. I don't know if I want to. I kind of want to see how bad it is, but I kind of don't because it sounds like they ruined it. All right.
Except increasing state repression. The piece talks about murders, explosions, etc., are exciting and striking in outward form, but absolutely harmless as far as the social system goes. The mechanism remains intact and continues to function. So you can become ungovernable without changing a thing. This other quote from another sort of anarchist, Albert Camus, comes to mind. He said, "The only way to deal with an unfree world is to become so absolutely free that your very existence is an act of rebellion." And, you know, it's so romantic. It sounds so great, but there's no freedom through our individual behavior and lifestyle. You know, nothing changes. And in this case, Trotsky talks about, or he says that the smoke from the confusion clears away after an act of terrorism. The panic disappears. The successor of the murdered minister makes his appearance. Life settles in again into the old rut. The wheel of capitalist exploitation turns as before. Only the police repression grows more savage and brazen. And one thing I didn't even address in this, wasn't even thinking about, is the use of the word terrorism by the imperialist states. But I've just sort of taken it as face value, whereas, you know, usually when we hear the T word, it's not, you know, it's really ripe with imperialist sentiment. Trotsky says there's nothing wrong with revenge. And he says, we don't want to extinguish the proletariat's unfulfilled feeling of revenge, but on the contrary, to stir it up again and again, and to deepen it, and to direct it against the real causes of all injustice and human baseness. I really love that. But individual revenge, there, it's the adjective, not the noun, that's the problem, doesn't satisfy us. Quote, "The account we have to settle with the capitalist system is too great. To learn to see all the crimes committed against humanity, all the indignities to which the human body and spirit are subjected as the twisted outgrowths and expressions of the existing social system, in order to direct all our energies into a collective struggle against this system. That is the direction in which the burning desire for revenge can find its highest moral satisfaction." Pretty great. All right. So moving on to the Lukács piece that we read. It's called Legality and Illegality. It's from 1920. And again, Lukács is not as straightforward as he could be. Really upsets me. I had to read this a lot, and I may still get some of the stuff wrong, but he said, we must slough off both the cretinism of legality and the romanticism of illegality. So right there, he's talking about the reformists and ultra leftists, or anarchists, or, you know, and he talks about reformists fetishize the ballot box, in short. I'm
kind of bored by this, and I don't know if I want to listen to this for another 20 minutes. Is anyone else with me? This wasn't what I thought it was going to be. I'm kind of like bored by it. I don't know. Should we watch something else? Should we watch? I've got one more presentation pulled up. It's called Eradicating Racism by its Root. Let's watch something else. I just don't feel I'm feeling like we're just not going to get anything good out of that one, to be honest. Next. Sometimes we can skip over things. It's okay. All right. Our last one for tonight is going to be called Eradicating Racism at its Roots, from BLM to Black Liberation.
Chapter of this book by Keongi Matuteller. We just finished it up for the RSN. Really great read, has some really great discussions in the RSN from it. And I just finished up presenting basically this exact same thing on the last 3 chapters. So some of the material that I'll cover will be a little bit extra, like from other parts of the book, but we mostly focus on like the last chapters, and it's like the themes are all the same and such. Cool. Sorry, let me adjust this real quick. Cool. So the 5th chapter, this is over like the 7th chapter. The 5th chapter talks a lot about Barack Obama. We don't have to go into that a whole lot, other than to talk about Barack Obama being the end of an illusion. This illusion of Black liberalism being a means towards Black liberation. Or like basically siding with the state, basically, supporting a Black Democrat as not just as an act of kind of like of electoral participation, but as a revolutionary strategy towards or as a strategy towards Black liberation. So Barack Obama polls really, really high with the Black community, always has and probably always will. He comes with that high polls with a double-edged sword. On the one hand, he gave massive amounts of bailout money to the banks and to the real estate conglomerates after the 2008 housing crisis. And yeah, just gave away tons and tons of taxpayer money, not just free money, but taxpayer money. And then simultaneously, the other side of that sword is that he basically only really ever gave like Black communities just kind of like a good stern scolding, citing like almost like a handbook of anti-Black stereotypes, talking about their habits for parenting, dietary choices, sexual mores, and television watching, like the kind of classic, right, just like laziness, as to reasons why the Black community was so devastated from this economic crisis. Right, as opposed to talking about like literally any fucking thing else, much less anyone who was actually responsible for what happened. This left the Black community,
I just want to note that the guy giving the presentation on Black liberation is very, very, very white.
Political community within a really choked political space, because they had put so much behind Barack Obama as once again, like as a strategy for Black liberation, that this kind of constrained the rest of like the Black political community from really commenting, right? Because they're kind of like their poster child, like kind of the representative of their viewpoint, was so backwards in this time period. Yeah, all that Obama really has was moral uplift for Black and brown people. This was a massive, massive failure of what MLK calls of integration into a burning house, of wanting to have Black representation and Black integration into bourgeois institutions, such as the state, or we can also extend this to talk about corporate elites, right? Black CEOs, Black heads of industry, Black business owners, this kind of thing. The Black political establishment, led by Obama, had shown over and over that it was not capable of the most basic task, keeping Black children alive. Cool. So to kind of like get in like some more general themes that the last chapter at the end of this book talks about. The first one is just liberalism in general, specifically like Black liberalism, which is the context of the book. To cite the problem as a lack of Black representation in public-private institutions is kind of the analytic base of this strategy. And it's an easy solution, right? You just elect more Black people, or you like get more Black representation within public and private institutions. It's a pretty direct one-to-one kind of solution. And this is like primarily represented by what's referred to in the book as the old guard of the civil rights movement. Most notably these days as Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson. And these are kind of like the big heads from, I guess, what's his name would be on that list too? What was the guy's name who died not too long ago? Like, anyways, whatever, I can't think of his name. But there was like another guy who was like kind of the other like prominent. Did somebody put it in the chat? I'm curious. John Lewis. Thank you, Sarah. Yeah, or everyone else. Damn, I guess the only person who can think. Anyways, yeah, I think John Lewis is kind of on that short list as well. So yeah, the old guard of the civil rights movement. So they come into Ferguson whenever BLM is kicking off, or whenever the rebellion of Ferguson is kicking off, and they're pretty quickly met with a very like kind of hard abstention from them, both as figures but also their strategy of Black liberalism.
Wow, you guys hear that?
One protester was quoted as saying,
The
"They don't
famous
represent
Black
us. We're here
Democrats
for a
were
new
not
movement, and we've
met
got
with
us some
open
warriors."
arms in
Yeah,
Ferguson.
some warriors out here, which I fucking love. You know, identifying as fighters, identifying as like we always talk about, as in opposition to the structures that be, in opposition to the powers that be, as opposed to trying to get along with those structures or get along with those powers. Right? We want to be really clear and concise that like we are at war.
They do not get along
Al
with Al
Sharpton
Sharpton.
goes into kind of goes in on these the protesters and those that are organizing civil unrest, civil disobedience, all these protests in Ferguson. Refers to them as provocateurs, and then even
Al
like goes so
Sharpton
far
doesn't
to
like
call
them
them
either.
pimps and hoes, referring to this like relationship between the organizers and the people that are in the organizations. A really nasty. That's the quotes in the book, but I didn't bother putting it. It's just like nasty. Just gets real nasty. And once again, like playing this narrative that that some of us are familiar with, right? There's good protesters and there's bad rioters. There's people that are correctly expressing their constitutional rights or whatever, and there's all the bad riffraff that's out there trying to riot and tear up our good society, which is exactly what we're trying to do. Much more concerned with condemning protesters than addressing the reasons why these protesters were out there in the first place. We see this a lot in regards to the old guard, in regards to liberalism, is rather than addressing the problems that people are in the streets for, or addressing the causes as to why people are upset, rather they would lambast and tear down the people that are in the streets upset. The VIP badges and huge donors was just kind of like a big like a corporatization or whatever of like the Ferguson movement, where Al Sharpton would hold big like charity banquets and stuff. But I'll talk about that. Yeah, and I also just wanted to touch on the revolutionary martyrs. This isn't to say that there weren't civil rights leaders that were strong, powerful, potent revolutionaries that would stop at nothing short other than Black liberation. You know, we can talk about MLK and Malcolm X and Fred Hampton and Rashada Shakur, and you know, there's a long list there. But these ended up as martyrs so much, and so now the civil rights movement and the Black liberation movement was kind of dwindled down into merely being represented by these liberal viewpoints. This is a quote that's taken from that someone's quoted it in that movie 13. We shouldn't ask why Bill Clinton is so strong. This is after the '94 crime bill. We should ask, why is the Black community so weak in our ability to defend ourselves? Let's not forget how many martyrs we put in the ground in the 60s and 70s. Let's not forget how many of our leaders had to leave the country or are in prison. You stripped out a whole generation of leadership. You ran them out of the country and you put them in prison and put them in cemeteries. And then you unleashed this blitzkrieg, and we don't have the ability to defend ourselves. You can tell the story of white leadership in America and never mention the FBI once. You can't tell the story of Black leadership, not one, without having to deal with the full weight of the criminal justice system weaponizing its Black dissent. I think it's an important thing to remember that that the old guard wasn't always like this. Rather, they were quite, they were murdered out of existence, which is, something we always have to remember in our criticisms of these liberal strategies. The next thing the book talks about is separatism and utopianism. And I draw the connection between separatism and liberalism in the sense that liberalism is a strategy for Black liberation as separatism or utopianism, I guess. This is the idea that like they can carve out safe spaces within structures bathed in the blood of ancestors, right? The idea that we can take these bourgeois institutions, these capitalist institutions that are rooted at their very core in racism and exploitation and oppression, and we can find a nice.
Did you hear that? The capitalist institutions that are rooted at their core in racism and oppression. Remember, whiteness means capitalism. It does not mean skin color. It means capitalism.
Blood of ancestors, right? The idea that we can take these bourgeois institutions, these capitalist institutions that are rooted at their very core in racism and exploitation and oppression, and we can find a nice little like safe cocoon within inside of it. This is the exact same logic that we see groups like Black Hammer participating in, is trying to separate and like move into the mountains to like separate or to separate themselves and to escape the oppression. There's 45 million people in poverty in the United States, and there's 400 billionaires. These are intersecting facts, realities, and not parallel realities. These don't exist independent of each other, but rather they depend on each other. So there's 45 million in poverty because there's 400 billionaires. There's people concentrate wealth because they take it from other people. So to simply say that you're just going to remove yourself from that system doesn't really like understand what the system is, right? Because it's a taking system. And then harm reduction is the central dynamic for this. And we see this the same kind of way in like lesser evilism voting strategies. Harm reduction is the way that we will achieve Black liberation. And yeah, as rather than fighting to eradicate the material conditions that have fighting to eradicate material conditions that produce oppression. Right, the oppression producing machine is still fully intact, but like at least people have warm socks on. Moment to movement. The book also talks about kind of like how to take a moment, talking about Mike Brown's killing in Ferguson. You know, we could use any other examples, Elijah McClain or George Floyd, and how to turn that into a movement. First, I talk about the tools of the failed strategy of the old guard were so glaringly out of touch. Let's see this as a really positive thing, as the fighters and protesters in Ferguson is immediately realizing how out of touch and tone deaf the old guard was to the needs and the desire, or the needs and the strategies of the young movement. So yeah, it's just this question of how do you move from a protest into a movement? How do you draw those who showed up, who you know, beat the streets, so to speak, into organizing? I mean, if we knew that we'd be a whole lot better at this. If we knew, we'd tell you, we swear. Organizing is not organic, instinctive, or ever easy. If we think that we can all get free through individual or small group resistance, we're totally kidding ourselves. Kyungi Yamatole quotes a historian in the book.
Okay. Peter, what are you doing here? What are you doing here? You've been around this channel for a long time. You've been around this channel long enough to know better. What are you doing here? Of course, they're still talking about Ferguson. Ferguson was a pivotal part of their movement. If you don't understand that, you don't understand them. And I have a hard time understanding why you don't understand that yet, since you've been around here a long ass fucking time. If you are not serious, if you're just trying to own the libs, go somewhere else.
The necessity of organizations and structure of resistance that can last. Right. This is the reason why we want to organize. This is the reason why we want to move into a movement, from movement to a movement, because a movement can last. Because these structures and these organizations have the ability to withstand time and withstand individual arrests and things like that, right? Individuals get really tired. I know that we've all, or maybe not all of us, but yeah, getting burned out within protests is a big deal. Just going to too much, but that's what we want. So we gotta, yeah, building organizations that aren't just individuals that can get tired, but are interpersonally dependent and interpersonally supportive. The larger the movement, the larger the coordination necessary. The more that we get this movement along, the more we get the movement of Black liberation along, and the socialist revolution, the more that coordination will be part of that, will be necessarily part of that. So how do we build organizations now? How do we build with sound structures now? One of the ways that we can do this is by politically generalizing into a systemic understanding of policing, taking a moment and understanding that it's part of a long history, that it's part of a much longer trajectory and tradition of the racist history, the racist institution of the cops. Right, we have
racist
that
institution of the cops,
strike breakers, slave catchers, and class traders. We want to connect these individual moments.
That's who they believe the cops are. Do you guys hear that? The cops are the strike breakers, the slave catchers, and the class traders. The cops are the managers of private property. This is why they want to defund the police, abolish the police.
Now, one of the ways that we can do this is by politically generalizing into a systemic understanding of policing, taking a moment and understanding that it's part of a long history, that it's part of a much longer trajectory and tradition of the racist history, the racist institution of the cops. Right, we have that pamphlet that's about like strike breakers, slave catchers, and class traders. We want to connect these individual moments of BLM, of these individual moments of George Floyd, and connect them with a broader structure of capitalist oppression.
Oh, we want to disconnect these from George Floyd specifically and connect it with a larger structure of capitalist oppression. Again,
trajectory and tradition of the racist history, the racist institution of the cops. Right, we have that pamphlet that's about like strike breakers, slave catchers, and class traders. We want to connect these individual moments of BLM, of these individual moments of George Floyd, and connect them with a broader structure of capitalist oppression.
So George Floyd was about capitalist oppression. Black Lives Matter was about capitalist oppression. And that, by the way, has nothing to do with the corrupt founders of the specific movement that embezzled money. That has nothing to do with them. If you're thinking they bought houses with the donations, that is a conservative talking point that actually has nothing to do with what they're talking about here. We're talking about BLM as in a broader social movement. And it's a movement to defund the police, abolish the police. That's why it's about the structure of capitalist oppression. Because police are the managers of private property. That's how they view them. Police are the enforcement mechanisms of capitalism. You cannot abolish capitalism without abolishing the police, defunding the police, abolishing the prison industrial complex. Does everyone understand? This is where that movement comes from. It's not about the Black Lives Matter activists that you guys don't like. It's not about that. It's about the fight to liberate Black people from the oppressive force of capitalism. It is a revolutionary movement.
And then also demands, which I think is like, I can't remember if it's in the last chapter. It might be in the 6th chapter. But Keonghee Machele has a whole bit where she talks about demands. It's really, really good. But demands are difficult. They can be really hard because it's a really, really large task to name specific demands in an inherently racist system, right? And this is what we find ourselves coming up against when we like try to develop slogans for protests and stuff. Is like really the only answer is like total human liberation, like the only answer is complete abolition of the capitalist system. but how do we get there, right? We want to like kind of build towards that. So yeah, demanding everything is the same as demanding nothing. We need to be giving a movement palatable and maybe not palatable, I don't like that word, digestible steps along the way in order to reach this goal of total human liberation. We can't leap from inactivity to changing the world in one single bound. We have to kind of, roll the wheels a little bit before we can get going. Narrowing and clarifying demands does not necessitate limiting the reach. And I think this is a really, really, really important thing to remember as we maintain the maximum of total human liberation while fighting for minimums that can achieve steps along the way. Sometimes balancing those two can get really, really hard. And there's a lot of different ways that we can make these demands or formulate these demands. There's economic things about raising minimum wage, raising healthcare. There's educate, and then there's as well as educational things, privatization of public schools, the school to prison pipeline, and standardized testing are all really great demands that help to upend the capitalist system. And then in addition to that, we want to work with organized labor, with the unions and with the workplaces that are able to challenge this system. The movement must enunciate total human liberation into digestible demands that can be worked toward on a not necessarily like a daily basis, but on a more short-term basis. And this is both like a sorry, this thing's always in the way. Not only do we need to have movement must into digestible demands that can be worked toward. So yeah, developing a roadmap or some semblance of a roadmap that we can point to and we can talk about as steps to move along, as well as a real plan for developing solidarity among the oppressed. Not enough to just say like, I'm an ally, but what is like a real plan for how to develop solidarity?
Ally is gateway to communist or comrade.
Which talks about my next point, solidarity. Obama received maybe more racist invective than like anyone ever with like the social media era, and
Obama's totally a racist, guys.
Massive everything is. But he also fought really hard to increase policing, militarization in the Middle East, and as well as handing out billions to the banks that had just crashed the economy and left millions of Black people homeless. Millions of like previously home-owning Black people homeless. Should Black workers ignore this fact and unite with Obama under the premise of racial solidarity and a shared lived experience? Or should Black workers unite with other normal or I guess white workers and Latinx workers who also lost their homes, and in order to challenge the system constantly attacking all poor and working class people? Which, right, it's like a rhetorical question, right? We organize on the basis of class solidarity, not racial solidarity.
They're saying normal because they are actually referencing skin color. They're not referencing capitalism in that one.
That doesn't mean that
they're saying
racial solidarity doesn't mean anything. Rather that
they're saying white meaning proletariat, oppressed, non-property owner, non-capitalist.
Precluded by class solidarity. And we also come back to the fact that this is not a moral question, but a question of the strategy of class warfare. This isn't the self-liberation of the working class can only come from itself, right? So in order to liberate ourselves as the working class, we have to all perform together. We have to all fight together. And that's what solidarity is. But not because it's the right thing to do. Well, also because it's the right thing to do, I guess, fine. But mostly because it's the most effective strategy to win. Class solidarity, like I just said, Black and Latinx people undeniably suffer a great deal under our economic order, but they share that reality with the majority of white workers as well. This isn't to like mask over
they don't hate white
the unique
people.
Oppressions and the
in this one they are so people need to learn discernment, okay? People need to learn to discern when they're using whiteness and white supremacy to refer to capitalism and when they are actually referring to white people as in white skin color. Anytime they're referring to a white person as a worker They are referring to skin color. But notice that every time they're referring to a white person as a worker, they view themselves in solidarity with that person, and they're not hating on them at all. Does everyone understand the difference? He's saying right here, 76% of white people in the US have experienced joblessness. Like, these are our comrades. They're not hating them. They're saying we need to work together. Like, your problems are our problems. The left doesn't hate white people. The left hates capitalists. They will use whiteness, white supremacy as a pejorative when they're referring to capitalism. When they're talking about the working class, it's just like, yeah, we got to work together, guys.
Uniquely harsh oppression that Black and Latinx people face, but it's also to say that white workers are also under a great deal of oppression and a great deal of exploitation. And also have a lot to gain from working with their other working class people. 76% of white people in the U.S. have experienced joblessness. It's a pretty high number. Just like the sheer number of that kind of puts in a perspective. That's what Kyangi Maktali says. Reactionary, mixed, or revolutionary consciousness does not change the objective status as exploited and oppressed. Whenever we engage in solidarity, whenever we begin to bring together workers of different religious backgrounds, with different ethnicities, different races, all that kind of stuff, there's going to be a mixed consciousness there. There's going to be some who hold revolutionary viewpoints. There's going to be some who hold kind of a mixed viewpoint. There's going to be some straight Trump supporting backwards ass reactionaries.
Yes. This is where Latinx comes from.
But this doesn't change the objective status of each and every one of them as being part of the working class. And the work.
Hang on. Bod is asking a great question. When they say racist ideology, do they mean capitalist ideology? Well, let's see. White workers will continue to endure poverty and degradation until they put aside racist ideology and act in accordance with their class interest. So what do you think? When they're saying racist ideology in this sense, do they mean capitalism? Let's replace racist ideology with capitalism and see if it works. White workers will continue to endure poverty and degradation until they put aside capitalism and act in accordance with their class interest. No way around it. Because for white workers, white being white skin, for white workers, proletariat, the class consciousness is that of the oppressed. They are oppressed under capitalism. People with white skin who are proletariat need to put aside capitalism. They need to stop reproducing capitalism. They need to stop supporting capitalism in order to act in accordance with their class interest of being oppressed. Does everyone understand this? Yeah, this is a great point, Milo. Remember, racism was created by capitalism. The only way to eliminate racism is to abolish capitalism. Does everyone understand this? They don't hate white people. They're saying, white workers, we're here. Reject capitalism. Act in accordance with your interest. It's capitalism that's the racist ideology. Does everyone understand? Yep, until capitalism is abolished, poverty remains. If you have questions about this, please speak up. Please tell me you have questions about this. Yep, Russian asshat over on Rumble. Capitalism doesn't care about skin color. Exactly right. Exactly right. It cares about oppressed versus oppressor. It cares about proletariat versus bourgeois. It cares about capitalist versus worker. That's all it cares about. Really good catch, Bot.
The solidarity of them being necessary. Pitting one section of the working class against the other blunts the consciousness of both. It doesn't just affect the person.
I mean, no, I would say the racist ideology is capitalism. We don't need to make this more complicated. The racist ideology is capitalism because capitalism created racism. Capitalism upholds racism. Systemic racism means the system that upholds capitalism. The system that upholds capitalism systemic racism means the system that upholds racism. There we go. The system that upholds racism is capitalism. Institutional racism means the institution that upholds racism, also capitalism. So I don't think it needs to be that complicated.
Who's kind of attacking, but also the person who's being attacked. It all just separates and divides and keeps the boss in power. And this consciousness, this mixed reactionary consciousness, will continue to be mixed until the very end of capitalism. Literally, if we all held revolutionary consciousness.
He just said that racism will continue to persist until capitalism is ended. We'll listen to that in a second. Micah, thank you for the super chat. How does capitalism cause racism? Oh, I'm so glad you asked. Capitalism is defined as private property ownership. Capitalism created slavery, which is the ownership of people as private property. Slavery created systemic racism. It created disparities in outcome based on race because you had the white people. And by the way, capitalism also created white people because people weren't considered white until slaves were brought to America. Before bringing slaves to America, they were considered English or Irish or Spanish or French or Jewish, mostly Jewish. But when white, light-skinned people brought dark-skinned slaves to America, that created the institution of whiteness or white supremacy as a way to distinguish the capitalist ownership class from the oppressed private property. So that's where white and black comes from in this framework. I'm not saying what I believe. I'm explaining to you what they believe. So capitalism created slavery. Slavery created whiteness. Slavery also created systemic racism, which is racial disparities in outcomes based on who was an oppressed who was a piece of private property and who was owned. Systemic racism does not refer to skin color. It means the system that upholds the system that upholds racism. The system that upholds racism is capitalism. And you're about to hear this guy say, this is going to exist as long as capitalism exists. They believe the only way to fix racism, to solve racism, is to abolish capitalism. Please let me know if you have questions, Micah. I do appreciate the super chat. It puts me within $8 of my goal, so if you guys appreciate the fact that we're streaming socialism for 4 hours on a Saturday night, please feel free to send in a super chat to say thank you. But let me know if you have any questions, Micah. Let's listen.
Person who's being attacked. It all just separates and divides and keeps the boss in power. And this consciousness, this mixed reactionary consciousness, will continue to be mixed until the very end of capitalism.
Bing!
Literally. If we all held revolutionary consciousness in this moment, then the socialist revolution would be over and we would all be in power, instilling the dictatorship of the proletariat. But it's not.
If all of these white people that are workers just understood that they were oppressed by capitalism, we'd have socialism in an instant. Because it's not about skin color. They don't care about skin color. They care about, are you a worker or are you a capitalist?
Not right. Well, there's mixed consciousness everywhere. People are, want to vote for Bernie or, want to vote for Joe Biden or, whatever, right? And these are all things that we have to work towards. These are all things we have to work through. White workers will continue to endure poverty and degradation until they put aside racist ideology and act in accordance with their material class interest. There's no way around this. This is not an option. The racial divide is supported by two main ideas, or there's two causes for it. This competition between black and white workers and the ruling class ideology, both of which we have to combat head on. This competition between black and white workers is, I would say, it's kind of like the hallmark of racial divide, because it keeps each of them separate into.
What would fix the competition between black and white workers, do you think? What is their solution to the competition between black and white workers, do you think? Yep. Yeah, exactly. Anytime you have a competition, you have a hierarchy. Exactly. So what would solve the competition between black and white workers? Flattening the hierarchy. What's another name for flattening the hierarchy? That would be equity. What's another name for equity, bot? What's another name for equity? I know you know. Come on, give it to me. What is another name for equity? Come on. Socialism! All right, I want to make sure everyone understood that. Socialists do not like competition. Socialists literally have created their own version of the game of Monopoly. I swear to God, I've seen this in person. They created their own version of Monopoly called like Communopoly or something like that, where the goal is not to get the most property and to actually bankrupt your opponents, because they wanted to create a game that was about sharing and everyone supporting each other. And it's like there is a socialist version of the game of Monopoly. I saw it at the Socialism 2023 conference. They use it in their socialist childcare programs, which they do have, to teach kids to share instead of remaining competitive. Why do socialists hate competition? Socialists hate competition because there's winners and losers. There's haves and have-nots. There's people who have all the resources, all the money, all the houses, all the hotels in Monopoly, and people who don't have all the money and all the houses and hotels in Monopoly. And the people who have all the monies and the resources and the hotels are the evil capitalist class, and the people who don't have the money and the hotels and the houses are the proletariat, the working class. The solution to competition is to flatten the hierarchy, is to abolish private property ownership. Abolishing private property ownership gets rid of all the houses and hotels in Monopoly, puts everyone on the same level. It creates a world based on equity where everyone ends in the same place. Equality of outcomes means you all end in the same place. Equality of outcomes means you flatten the hierarchy. And that is what socialism is. Socialism is all about flattening a hierarchy between the oppressor and the oppressed, the capitalist and the worker, the bourgeois, the proletariat. You flatten the hierarchy, you get a world based on sameness. That is what socialism is. Does everyone understand that? Let me know. This is the good stuff we get to in the 4th hour of socialism. All right, we're almost done.
What am I trying to say here? Understanding who the real enemy is, which would be the boss, the property owning boss. That's the real enemy that we're competing against, not other workers. And the ruling class ideology, all the stuff that talks about all the oblique racism.
Wait, look at this quote from Malcolm X. Look at this quote from Malcolm X. It is incorrect to classify the revolt of the Negro as simply a racial conflict of black against white, or as a purely American problem. We are seeing today a global rebellion of oppressed versus oppressor, the exploited against the exploiter. Even Malcolm X was saying it wasn't about skin color, guys. Hey, thanks Conspiracy Extremists for the $2 Rumble rant. Watch Horseshoes and hand grenades Tuesdays at 8 p.m. Pacific time, so I can give Carlin more than $1.50. Hey, I appreciate you guys. I definitely recommend people subscribe to Conspiracy Extremists. I was on their show. I had a great time. They're really good guys, and they do hang out and they pay attention in the chat, and that's all I can really ask for. So definitely over on Rumble, Conspiracy Extremists. Their show is Horseshoes and Hand Grenades, and it's a good time, and I enjoyed my time on it, and I hope they invite me back sometime. All right, let's finish up.
Question to be talked about is Under what circumstances can these ideas change? How can we begin to combat these ideas, these mixed consciousness ideas? How can we begin to
see? This is what I'm saying. This is what I'm saying. James didn't clue me in. After years of listening to him, Carlin brought it all together. Common story. Common story, Vitali. Common story. Welcome. Join the ranks of the people who are informed about what's going on in the world. We appreciate you.
To raise political questions, raise political arguments, and advocate for things like solidarity, advocate for things like a multicultural revolution, all this kind of stuff. And we see the answer to that struggle is engaging in organizations, is engaging with other workers, is getting into social movements, getting into labor movements, whatever it be you, and struggling with people and working to build these organizations that we talked about. It is incorrect to classify the revolt of the Negro as a simply racial conflict of Black against white, or as purely an American problem. We are seeing today a global rebellion of the oppressed against the oppressor, and the exploited against the exploiter. Such as Palestine. The revolutionary left is a tiny, mostly white and virtually powerless entity right now in the political spectrum. We can't do a whole lot, but we want to, right? The greatest hurdle to achieve a revolutionary movement is racial solidarity, is this racial divide that we experience. Solidarity is absolutely necessary. It is not optional.
Thank you, Vitali. Appreciate you.
And a mostly white socialist movement will not win. A multicultural socialist movement will win. That's the grounds on which we organize. Black liberation is intimately bound up.
Look at this. I love this. He admits that most of the people on the revolutionary left are white. Yeah, you want to convince me that socialists hate white people when most people on the revolutionary left are white? No. No.
With human liberation and with social change. These are not things that are secondary or will come after the revolution, but are things that can be addressed head on in the here and now. And then linking all these struggles between all oppressed peoples is important. That's what solidarity is making these connections, seeing these connections. This is a quote from a comrade from the ISO that I didn't personally know, but a lot of people did, who recently died. And this was posted as kind of a commemoration for her, but I thought it fit really, really well with this little presentation. So it just says, you build solidarity by saying, I'm here with you today on principle, make the connections about how our struggles are linked, and invite you to fight alongside me tomorrow. Not by saying, you went there with me yesterday, so I refuse to be there with you today. That was very well said. And then just to polish it off with my penultimate slide, polish it off with a quote from Lenin, from What Is to Be Done. A socialist ideal should be the tribune of the people who is able to react to every manifestation of tyranny and oppression, no matter where it appears, no matter what stratum or class of the people it affects, who is able to generalize all these manifestations and produce a single picture of police violence and capitalist exploitation, who is able to take advantage of every event, however small, in order to set forth before all other socialist convictions and their democratic demands, in order to clarify for all and everyone the world historic significance of the struggle for the emancipation of the proletariat. Connections must be made, liberation for all or liberation for none. That's all I got. Thanks.
All right. We made it. Guys, we made it through another episode of Socialism Saturday. We got a lot of good stuff tonight. My favorite moment, I have to say, was the guy flat out saying that in order to create a socialist world, we need to get people to want to abolish the Constitution and abandon American patriotism and stuff like that. And we're not going to tell them that right off the bat. We're just gonna slip that in there. Dan, watch the replay. It was a good night, bro. It was a good night. Good to see you, my friend. Hey, guys, just as a reminder, we do Socialism Saturday every Saturday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. I do take Sundays off, so we will be taking tomorrow off, but we will be doing a movie night in my supporter Discord. Does anyone know what movie we're watching? Did Jennifer announce what movie we were watching? Hang on. Let me see. We are watching, this looks like, what is that? The Headless Horseman. The Headless Horseman. Hey, thank you, Alex. We met our super chat goal. We met our super chat goal for the night. I do appreciate it. We are watching, it looks like, The Headless Horseman tomorrow night in the supporter Discord for movie night. That is going to be at 8 p.m. We do watch a new movie every single Sunday night at 8 p.m. Now, how do you get in on that movie night action? You go to my Substack, which is Carlyn, KARLYN.substack.com, and you sign up for email updates. In theory, you sign up as a supporter for $8 a month, $80 a year, because I am 100% funded like you. Unlike James Lindsay, I do not take big donor and big corporation and big overlord and big narrative-driven bullshit money. I only take money from you guys. My only job is to show you receipts and to tell you the truth and to put the information out there. You guys can decide what to do with it. But what I do every Sunday on my Substack is I send out a newsletter that looks like this. This is last week's newsletter. Tomorrow I'm going to send out another newsletter. And so what you do when you get this newsletter is you scroll all the way down to the bottom. It goes through all the content that I've created throughout the week for you, because I create, fun fact, more anti-communist content on the internet than like anyone else on the internet, and it's not even close. And what you do is you get down to the bottom, and underneath this red box, you're going to get access to your supporter perks for the week. That includes access to the supporter Discord. We're going to be doing a lot more voice chats, voice calls in the supporter Discord. And so I want to encourage everyone, make sure you're in there, make sure you're joined. Come join us for movie night on Sundays. Occasionally there is movie night throughout the week as well. Mac B's been hosting movie nights on Mondays. LK hosted a movie night on Friday. We have writers group on Thursday. There's so much shit going on in my supporter Discord. Everyone needs to make sure they are part of it. And you do that by becoming a paying supporter on my Substack. Again, that is carlin.substack.com. Also, another thing you can do to support the work I'm doing is actually get early access to my book, because I am cranking on this re-education book. I'm writing a book called Re-Education, the Definitive Anti-Communist Guide for Decoding the Left. I hope to have it out before the end of the year so you guys can have it in time for Christmas. But, I'm actually writing the book as part of a Substack. So if you sign up for this Substack, it is a standalone Substack. It is a premium product, $10 a month, $100 for the year. You are going to get access to every single one of my drafts before the book is even written. I posted 3 chapters just last night. I'm cranking on this book. I am motivated. I'm focused. I am distilling all of the learnings from the last 3.5 years of watching socialism on the internet down into a quick start guide in which I am downloading all of my socialist knowledge to you in plain English and things that are easy to read, easy to understand. There's going to be podcast versions too if you prefer to hear me reading them. I need to catch up on those. Give me a little time on that one. But all of that is available on this Substack. That is speaksocialist.substack.com. And again, as a reminder, one last way you can support the work I'm doing is by heading over to the Unwoke Art store, which is my merchandise store. That is unwokeart.com. And you can get this awesome yard sign. I've never been so proud of a product in my life. Pick up the Marxism is Evil yard sign. Get it delivered to your house to have it in time for Halloween. You're going to have all these trick-or-treaters coming. You want to educate them about Marxism and their parents more aptly. So make sure you pick up that. It's perfect for election season. You're going to show your anti-communist colors to all your neighbors. And then we have the limited edition Halloween collection, which I've created 4 unique designs that are limited edition only for the month of October. And these are all anti-communist Halloween designs. They're available on t-shirts. They're available on sweatshirts. They're available on pint glasses. They're available on mugs. You can get a sticker set if you want some stickers to hang up around your neighborhood. We've got the Marxism is Coming for Your Soul, which is Karl Marx as the Grim Reaper. We've got Collectivism, which is just based off an old school horror movie design. It just looks really effing cool. We've got Marx, everyone is equal until they're not. This actually comes in gold. Check this out. Boom. How cool is that? Come on. Come on, it looks awesome. And then we've got the zombie one, the Marxist Utopia of the Dead. This all comes in a variety of different colors. It's fun, it's cool. You're not going to get anti-communist merch anywhere else on the internet like this. This is all available in my Unwoke art store, and of course, all purchases do go to support the work I'm doing, and all of these designs are available for one more day. You have until tomorrow at midnight. One more day to get 25% off all of the Halloween merch in the Unwoke Art merch store. You'll still be able to get it for the rest of the month, but it's going to go back up to its original price at midnight tomorrow night. So if you order it on Monday, it's going to be 25% more. No reason for that. Just get it now. It looks cool. Like, people are loving these pint glasses. I've been giving a lot of good feedback about these pint glasses. I love it. I'm such a fan of my own merch. I love it. I think I have the best merch store on the internet, for the record. All right, guys, that is all I have for you. I'm taking my leave. And that's all I have. Thanks for hanging out, guys. We'll see you next week. Take care. Bye.